Chapter 594. After Old Man Shao found the herbs, he went to Qin Fan and told him about the body of a demigod and the Butian secret record. Qin Fan's hope was reignited after hearing about it. According to the Butian secret record, not only could his Dantian recover, he could also regrow the precious things that he had lost. At first, Old Man Shao thought that Qin Fan's reaction was intentional. So, he reminded him about the prerequisite of cultivating the Butian secret record. Qin Fan told his disciple about the bad things that had happened to him recently. Old Man Shao was shocked after hearing about it. To heal Shao Yifeng, true qi was needed. Qin Fan's cultivation was destroyed, so he could not heal him immediately. So, Qin Fan cultivated the Butian secret record first. Qin Fan was gifted with super martial Dao insight by the system. After cultivating the Butian secret record for a few days, he was able to get some results. Half a month later, he had improved tremendously and mastered the Butian secret record. Thus, his Dantian recovered. The reason for this was because of Qin Fan's talent and intelligence. Secondly, he was already familiar with ancient martial arts. So, he was able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. After his Dantian was restored, not only did Qin Fan recover his cultivation base that was crippled, he even went a step further and stepped into the human immortal realm of Earth. Also, his broken limbs were showing signs of regrowth. Judging by the speed of his growth, he would become a complete man in less than 3 months. Qin Fan was overjoyed. Old Man Shao also congratulated Qin Fan for his great improvement in cultivation. Then, he asked Qin Fan to heal Shao Yifeng as soon as possible. This was something that Qin Fan had agreed to before. Plus, Old Man Shao had brought him new hope. So, naturally, he would not object to it. Qin Fan began to heal Shao Yifeng. Qin Fan's medical skills were superb. With the help of all kinds of rare herbs, he successfully repaired Shao Yifeng's damaged brain. Although he was still a little dumb, he could remember a lot of things. That included being assassinated when he was protecting Qin Yunhan in Qingling. Old Man Shao was furious when he heard about it. He immediately asked who the assassin was. Shao Yifeng revealed Wang Haoren's information. After Qin Fan heard this, his expression changed. He thought that it was just someone with the same name. However, after asking for more details, he realized that the Wang Haoren who harmed Shao Yifeng was the Wang Haoren that he knew. After knowing this, the doubts that lingered in Qin Fan's heart were immediately resolved. Qin Fan had never understood who the person who had plotted against him was. He had never linked it to Wang Haoren. In his mind, there was a preconceived notion that Wang Haoren was an ordinary person. However, according to Shao Yifeng, he was subdued by Wang Haoren. Shao Yifeng had a certain level of martial arts. To be able to subdue Shao Yifeng meant that Wang Haoren knew martial arts. According to Shao Yifeng's description, Wang Haoren's martial arts were limited. Otherwise, he would not have plotted against him. However, this matter had opened up Qin Fan's train of thought. That was, Wang Haoren had been hiding the fact that he knew martial arts. Furthermore, the matter of plotting against Shao Yifeng and plotting against him was a different approach to achieve the same result. When Shao Yifeng knew that Wang Haoren knew martial arts, he was also extremely shocked. Because before this, Shao Yifeng did not think that a rich second-generation heir knew martial arts. Wasn't this mentality exactly the same as his? After thinking about it carefully, Qin Fan increasingly felt that Wang Haoren was suspicious. Qin Fan took out his phone and dialed Wang Haoren's number. Buzz! Wang Haoren had just gotten off the plane when he felt his phone vibrate. He took out his phone and saw that it was a call from Qin Fan. He smiled inexplicably and immediately picked up the phone. Haoren, where are you? Qin Fan hid the suspicion in his heart and asked with a smile on his face. I just came back from somewhere else, Wang Haoren replied with a smile, and then asked, Oh right, have you recovered from your illness? Have you been discharged? I've been discharged. I'm at home now, and my body is fine. Thank you for your concern. Qin Fan's expression was gloomy, but his tone was very gentle. It's my pleasure. Wang Haoren could not see Qin Fan's expression through the phone. Are you free now? Qin Fan suddenly asked. What's the matter? Wang Haoren did not reply immediately, but asked first. "It's nothing much. I've just been discharged from the hospital, and my apprentices want to visit me. They want to come to my place for lunch. Why don't you come along? The more the merrier." Qin Fan invited Wang Haoran in a friendly tone. After Wang Haoran heard this, he hesitated. Qin Fan's other apprentices did not matter. The important ones were Song Zhihui, Mu Nanji, and Tantai Yaoyue. These three people were currently in a relationship with him, but they did not know of each other's existence. If he was accidentally exposed, then it would be a little bad. Thus, he subconsciously wanted to refuse. But he quickly realized that Qin Fan's attitude was a little strange, because this guy's tone was too friendly. Before Qin Fan's accident, Wang Haoran and Tantai Yaoyue had gone to see Qin Fan and stabbed Qin Fan's heart. They even revealed their relationship with Tantai Yaoyue. Qin Fan now knew that Mu Nanji and Tantai Yaoyue were with Wang Haoran. This kind of good thing was what Qin Fan had hoped for. And now that Qin Fan's cultivation was crippled and he was cut off, logically speaking, he should be extremely unhappy. Not to mention giving him a face, at least he should not be so friendly. This was not right. "Okay, I'll come over at noon." Wang Haoran directly agreed. He wanted to see what Qin Fan wanted to do. Previously, Qin Fan was strong, so strong that Wang Haoran was restrained and maintained a friendly relationship with Qin Fan on the surface. But now, a small protagonist like Qin Fan was no longer in Wang Haoran's eyes. "Then I'll wait for you," Qin Fan replied with a smile. Then, he exchanged a few more pleasantries with Wang Haoran before hanging up the phone. After ending the call, Qin Fan's face was frighteningly gloomy. Beside him, Old Man Xiao and Xiao Yifeng clenched their fists. They even wanted to crawl along the phone and kill Wang Haoran. But fortunately, they endured and did not ruin Qin Fan's plan. What Qin Fan wanted was to expose Wang Haoran's true colors in front of his apprentices and let Tantai Yaoyue and Mu Nanji see Wang Haoran clearly and break off their relationship with him. Then, Qin Fan would use a thunderous method to kill him. His cultivation had reached the peak of martial arts, and he had become a land immortal. Qin Fan's confidence had also risen to an extremely high level. According to Wang Haoran's actions, it was absolutely impossible for him to be a land immortal. Otherwise, he would not have plotted against him. Qin Fan naturally felt that this matter was in the bag and there would be no accidents. What he needed to think about was how to take back what originally belonged to him but was taken away. "Yaoyue, you're still mine in the end." Qin Fan's obsession flared up and he could not help but silently say in his heart. Chapter 595. While Qin Fan was in the hospital, his disciples went to see him one after another and gradually got to know each other. These disciples even spontaneously created a group to facilitate communication and even pulled Qin Fan into the group. After knowing that Qin Fan was discharged from the hospital, the disciples discussed and prepared to visit Qin Fan at noon. Ma family villa. Ma Hongsheng was the only disciple who hated Qin Fan so much that he even wanted Qin Fan dead. His water lily poison had been completely removed, and he no longer needed to sleep. He became much more energetic. Now that he was cured, Ma Hongsheng did not need to rely on Qin Fan anymore. The plan in his heart could also be implemented. His wife was touched by Qin Fan. Of course, Ma Hongsheng could not keep swallowing his anger. Not long after that incident, Ma Hongsheng had already started to prepare. After being introduced, he contacted a top assassin through a special channel. Now was the time to act. Ma Hongsheng wanted to expose Qin Fan's ugly face in front of Qin Fan's other disciples and then let the assassin kill Qin Fan. Only then could Ma Hongsheng vent his anger. Before leaving, Ma Hongsheng burned incense in front of the ancestral tablet and prayed that the ancestors would bless him with a smooth revenge. Seeing Ma Hongsheng's action, Cheng Rui could not help but be a little surprised. When Ma Hongsheng left, Cheng Rui could not help but ask, "Hongsheng, where are you going?" "My master has just been discharged from the hospital, and I plan to visit him." Ma Hongsheng explained with a smile. He was afraid that Cheng Rui would not be able to take the blow, so he did not dare to tell her about Cheng Rui being bullied. Naturally, he would not tell her the real purpose of this trip. But Ma Hongsheng did not know that he was the one who was kept in the dark. "Then go and come back early." Cheng Rui smiled and sent Ma Hongxing out. She watched Ma Hongxing get into a Rolls-Royce Phantom and leave. When a Rolls-Royce Phantom completely disappeared from her sight, the virtuous smile on Cheng Rui's face gradually disappeared. She took out her phone and made a call. Ma Hongxing's illness is completely cured now. He just set off to visit Qin Fan. Before leaving, his behavior was a little strange. If I'm not wrong, he might take action. After the call was connected, Cheng Rui reported to Wang Haoran. What do you think he will do? Wang Haoran asked. He thought that I was. Cheng Rui guessed. He was so angry. I feel that only by killing Qin Fan would he be able to release the hatred in his heart. I agree with you. Wang Haoran couldn't help but smile. It seemed that today's banquet would be quite lively. Then what do you think is the possibility of Ma Hongxing succeeding? Cheng Rui asked. The success rate is 0, Wang Haoran said with certainty. Why do you think so? Cheng Rui was a little curious. I'm just guessing, Wang Haoran said vaguely. Of course, he couldn't tell Cheng Rui that Qin Fan was protected by the protagonist's halo. How could a small Ma Hongxing deal with him? Then I hope you're right, Cheng Rui said sincerely. It seems like you really want something to happen to Ma Hongxing. Wang Haoran could hear some of Cheng Rui's emotions from her tone. Ma Hongxing will only get in the way. Don't you think so? Cheng Rui said. Don't you care about a trace of friendship? Wang Haoran asked. I married him because he's rich. I don't have any feelings for him. I only hate him. It's good that he's dead. That way, I can inherit all his assets, Cheng Rui said frankly. Hearing this, Wang Haoran wasn't very surprised. He had seen that Cheng Rui was a ruthless woman a long time ago. Do you think I'm scary? Cheng Rui saw that Wang Haoran didn't speak for a while, so she suddenly asked nervously. From Ma Hongxing's point of view, it's true. You're a scary woman, Wang Haoran said. When Cheng Rui heard this, she couldn't help but panic. She couldn't help but reveal her heart. I'm ruthless and cruel only to others. For you, I can't wait to give you all my tenderness. Even if you ask me to die, I won't frown. Wang Haoran didn't doubt the truth of these words at all. After all, Cheng Rui's favorability was full. It was normal for her to have such thoughts. However, Wang Haoran didn't know how to respond to Cheng Rui, so he chose to remain silent. Cheng Rui saw that Wang Haoran didn't answer. She was afraid that it would make him unhappy, so she didn't continue to pester him. Instead, she was ready to find an excuse to end the conversation. But before she could speak, the maid hurriedly ran over and reported in a panic. Mr. Zhang, you've been in trouble. Madam, it's not good. The young master is missing. Can't you look for him if he's missing? Cheng Rui looked calm and said to the maid. Her son had just learned to walk. Even if he could walk, he wouldn't walk too far. I've searched inside and out, but I can't find him, the maid replied. Then check the surveillance, Cheng Rui said. I did, but I don't know what happened to the surveillance. It was fine before, but it suddenly broke down inexplicably. When Cheng Rui heard this, she couldn't help but frown. She subconsciously felt that this matter was a bit unusual. Is your son missing? The phone hadn't been hung up yet. Wang Haoran heard part of the conversation between Cheng Rui and the maid, so he couldn't help but ask. Well, he suddenly disappeared. The maid said that she searched inside and out, but she couldn't find him. The surveillance suddenly broke down, Cheng Rui said. This may not be a coincidence. Wang Haoran judged. I think someone sneaked into the Ma family villa and stole him, Cheng Rui said. Don't worry. Check if there are any clues. If you find anything, tell me. I'll try my best to help you look for him. Since you're working for me, I won't treat you badly. Leave it to me. Wang Haoran took the initiative to say. Cheng Rui didn't answer immediately. Instead, she motioned for the maid to continue looking. After the maid left, Cheng Rui casually replied, That's right. If he's missing, then so be it. That's your son. Wang Haoran was surprised. He thought that he had overestimated Cheng Rui's ruthlessness, but Cheng Rui's reaction was still somewhat unexpected. Yes, but that's Ma Hongxing's son. When Cheng Rui said this, her voice was slightly hoarse. It was obvious that she didn't completely care. Wang Haoran felt that he could roughly guess Cheng Rui's thoughts. After Cheng Rui knew that Ma Hongxing might not be able to come back, She felt that the son Ma Hongsheng left behind would be an obstacle in the future, an obstacle to stop her from throwing herself into his arms. Ma Hongsheng was just about to take action. Now that his son is suddenly missing, this matter might be related. Wang Howard avoided the topic and changed the topic. You mean this matter has something to do with Qin Fan? Cheng Rui asked. Chapter 596. Qin Fan wouldn't do such a thing. I just feel that these two matters might be related. Of course, maybe I'm thinking too much. Ma Hongsheng has offended a lot of people in the business world. It might be someone else who did it. Wang Howard suddenly paused, then said, Be careful. Be careful. If anything happens, call me immediately. In my impression, you rarely care about me like this. Cheng Rui said happily. We're business partners. No, we're dependent. You said a long time ago. No matter what you want me to do, I can promise you unconditionally. My house's door will always be open for you. Whether you come in or go out, it's all up to you. As long as you're happy. Cheng Rui corrected. When he first heard this, he felt that it was normal. However, Wang Howard couldn't help but misunderstand. Moreover, he felt that Cheng Rui said it on purpose. Wang Howard didn't directly reply. He just remained silent. Seeing this, Cheng Rui ended the call and didn't continue on this topic. After hanging up the phone, Wang Howard couldn't help but sigh. Cheng Rui was really considerate. He had to say that young women were really sensible. They were much more sensible than little girls. No wonder there were so many people like Boss Chow. From a certain point of view, young women really had a unique kind of attraction. Wang Howard sighed inwardly. Near noon, Qin Fan's villa, which was previously relatively quiet, also became lively with the arrival of each and every disciple. Tantai Yaoyue, Song Zhihui, Mu Nanji, and Ma Hongsheng came one after another. Old man Xiao lived in Qin Fan's villa. In terms of seniority, he was the first to leave the sect and was everyone's eldest senior brother. After Tantai Yaoyue and the others arrived, they all respectfully greeted senior brother Xiao. Old man Xiao smiled and responded in turn. In the villa, it seemed to be joyous and harmonious. Soon, Qin Fan also came out of his room. The disciples greeted Qin Fan one by one. Other than old man Xiao, Tantai Yaoyue, and the others all had a kind of sigh in their hearts. Everyone felt some sympathy for Qin Fan's experience. All of them were extremely cautious when they spoke. They were afraid of hurting Qin Fan's fragile heart. When old man Xiao saw this scene, he wanted to tell the truth. However, Qin Fan secretly shook his head, hinting old man Xiao not to say anything for the time being. Qin Fan said that he wanted to treat them to a meal, but his disciples naturally wouldn't let him personally cook. After all, Qin Fan had just been discharged from the hospital. It was not appropriate. Song Zhihui, who also had superb cooking skills, took over the task and went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. The ingredients had been prepared in advance, and it was sumptuous enough. Song Zhihui quickly got busy. The servants in Qin Fan's villa were assisting him. Tantai Yao Yu and the others were drinking tea and chatting in the hall. After a while, another guest arrived. It was Wang Howard. You look much better. Congratulations on your recovery and discharge. When Wang Howard saw Qin Fan, he greeted him with a fake smile. Please take a seat. A haze flashed in Qin Fan's eyes, but he still showed a fake smile on the surface and gestured in a seemingly friendly manner. Howard, come sit with me. Tantai Yaoyu hadn't seen him for a long time, so she naturally missed him very much. She immediately waved at him. When Mu Nanji heard this, she was suddenly shocked. However, she didn't think too much and thought that the two were just familiar with each other. However, Mu Nanji quickly realized that this wasn't the case. Because after Wang Howard sat down, Tantai Yaoyu actually grabbed Wang Howard's hand and acted very intimately. Mu Nanji couldn't sit still anymore. She frowned and said to Tantai Yaoyu, Junior sister, don't you know shame by grabbing his hand like this? Tantai Yaoyu was a little puzzled by Mu Nanji's attitude. Although she hadn't known Mu Nanji for long, she could tell that she wasn't the kind of person who would meddle in other people's business. With a woman's intuition, Tantai Yaoyu smelled hostility, so she stated, Senior sister, this is my boyfriend. Your boyfriend? Mu Nanji exclaimed in shock. Is there a problem? Tantai Yaoyu felt that Mu Nanji's reaction was a little abnormal. "This is my boyfriend," Mu Nanji said anxiously. Hearing this, Tantai Yaoyu was first shocked. Then she looked at Wang Haoran and asked, "Is it true? Is what she said true?" Yes. Since Wang Haoran was here, he was prepared to lay his cards on the table, so he directly answered frankly. Tantai Yaoyu couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. Mu Nanji also felt the same. However, in comparison, Tantai Yaoyu's acceptance was higher. After all, she already had several sisters. However, Mu Nanji thought that she was the only one. "This is someone else's place, so I can't say too much. However, I will give you an explanation." Wang Haoran's expression didn't show any panic at all. Instead, he appeared very calm and even a little solemn. When Tantai Yaoyu and Mu Nanji saw this, even if they were a little embarrassed and angry, they didn't dare to act out. "Haoran, we're all on the same side here. It's all right, you can explain right now," Qin Fan said generously, but his words were clearly provoking. "This matter has nothing to do with you, right? What nonsense are you talking about? Things were different now." Wang Haoran didn't need to give face to Qin Fan now. Hearing this, the smile on Qin Fan's face slowly disappeared, and his expression became a little gloomy. Old Man Xiao stared at Wang Haoran with a gaze that was filled with hatred. "If you want to explain, it's best to do it now. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you won't have the chance to walk out of this door." Qin Fan's tone revealed some unfriendliness. Wang Haoran naturally understood. Sure enough, today's meal was indeed not simple. It was a Hongmin banquet. The surrounding atmosphere suddenly became tense. Tantai Yaoyu and Mu Nanji both felt that Qin Fan seemed to want to target Wang Haoran. The two of them subconsciously moved closer to Wang Haoran. Although they had touched the car, Tantai Yaoyu's favorability was at 80 and Mu Nanji's favorability was at 70. Both of them had reached the level of undying affection for Wang Haoran. Facing this situation, the two of them temporarily ignored Wang Haoran's deception. Although the atmosphere was heavy, Wang Haoran appeared to be very relaxed. He looked at Qin Fan and smiled. "Could there be some misunderstanding between us?" Wang Haoran could naturally see the killing intent in Qin Fan's eyes. If he guessed correctly, Qin Fan should have discovered that the person who plotted against him was him. However, Wang Haoran didn't understand how Qin Fan discovered it. That was why he said this and wanted Qin Fan to explain. "Misunderstanding? This isn't a misunderstanding." Qin Fan sneered. He gave Old Man Xiao a look, indicating for him to call the witness. Old Man Xiao understood and was about to leave the hall. However, right at this moment, Ma Hongsheng, who had been silent, suddenly made a move. He actually took out a weapon and pressed it against Qin Fan's head. "I don't care what grudges you have, but settle my matter first," Ma Hongsheng said. This sudden unforeseen event stunned everyone except for Wang Haoran. The others didn't expect that Ma Hongsheng would hold Qin Fan hostage. Chapter 597. Junior Brother Ma, let go of Master. Old Man Xiao was shocked and roared. "Don't move. I'll kill whoever moves." Ma Hongsheng threatened. Old Man Xiao wanted to stop him, but Qin Fan raised his hand slightly to stop him. Qin Fan was very calm. Old Man Xiao saw this and suddenly realized that this was not a threat to Master. Therefore, he did not continue to interfere and watch the situation develop. Qin Fan was puzzled and said to Ma Hongsheng, "Little Ma, what do you mean? Don't you know what you've done? You're still asking me what I mean." Ma Hongsheng gritted his teeth. "I have a clear conscience. What is it that you don't like? Why don't you tell me directly?" Qin Fan said. "Do you still remember that you stayed in my house for a night to treat my illness?" Ma Hongsheng reminded. "I remember. I stayed in the Ma family for a night. How did I offend you?" Qin Fan was puzzled. "Qin Fan, you're still pretending. Tell me what you did that night. Otherwise, don't blame me for misfiring." Ma Hongsheng threatened. "I really don't know what I did. You can tell me directly and let me know." Qin Fan pretended to be weak. "That night at the Ma mansion, you sneaked into my room and took advantage of the fact that I was unconscious due to the aphrodisiac poison. You used a special method to knock out my wife, and then..." Ma Hongsheng felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He was extremely agitated, and his eyes were about to spit fire. After a pause, he continued, "You thought you could hide it from everyone, but you never expected that when I was unconscious, I would suddenly wake up for a while and know your true colors." Hearing this, Qin Fan could not help but think of the time when he was staying in the Ma family villa. When he woke up in the morning, Ma Hongxing's expression was strange. At that time, Qin Fan felt a little strange. So it was because of this. I didn't do this. Maybe someone pretended to be me, or maybe you were just dreaming. Qin Fan explained, "That's impossible. It's definitely not a dream." I asked Arue, and she said that she felt very uncomfortable. She only thought that she had that kind of dream. But I know that's not the case. She must have been bewitched by someone using some strange method. Only you, Qin Fan, would know such a method. Ma Hongxing's tone was firm, and Qin Fan couldn't find any reason to refute. In reality, he wasn't the only one who knew this method. Tantai Yaoyue also knew it. But Tantai Yaoyue was a woman and couldn't possibly do such a thing. Thus, Qin Fan could only defend himself. "I can swear that I did not do such a thing. If I did, then I will not live past today." Ma Hongxing was already convinced that it was Qin Fan who did it. Of course, he wouldn't believe Qin Fan's oath. However, he did not intend to kill Qin Fan with his own hands. He only wanted to interrogate Qin Fan and force him to confess the ugly things he had done. Then, he asked the assassin to create an accident to kill Qin Fan. This way, Ma Hongxing would not be implicated. But since Qin Fan didn't admit it, he couldn't beat Qin Fan to death. Qin Fan's sudden vow coincided with Ma Hongxing's plan. Therefore, Ma Hongxing seized the opportunity and said, "Then let the heavens decide. If you don't live past today, then it proves that you're lying, and the heavens are taking your life again." After speaking, Ma Hongxing pretended to restrain the anger on his face. At the same time, he put away his weapon. Ma Hongxing's wishful thinking was very good. But there were some things that couldn't be calculated no matter how much he calculated. A burst of babies' cries came from outside. Everyone looked over and saw a man wearing a fisherman's hat carrying a baby walked into the hall. When Ma Hongxing saw the baby, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright, because this baby was his son. Immediately, he looked at the man wearing the fisherman's hat and immediately recognized that he was the assassin he had found. What is the meaning of this? Quickly give my son back to me. When Ma Hongxing saw the assassin suddenly appear and carrying his son, he knew that the situation was not good. Thus, he took out his weapon. The man wearing the fisherman's hat did not pay attention to Ma Hongxing. He only walked in front of Qin Fan and respectfully called out, "Master." Ma Hongxing was stunned. He never thought that the assassin he had found was Qin Fan's disciple. "Leng Shui, why are you here? And you are carrying Xiao Ma's son." Qin Fan was surprised. The man wearing the fisherman's hat was called Leng Shui. He learned the way of the assassin from Qin Fan. Leng Shui was like his name. Other than his respect for Qin Fan, he was completely a cold-blooded and heartless creature. He had no emotions to speak of. Even if fellow disciples, Leng Shui would not care about friendship. "Master, Xiao Ma hired me to create an accident to kill you." Leng Shui knew Ma Hongxing's plan and directly exposed it on the spot. After hearing this, Qin Fan couldn't help but recall Ma Hongxing's words just now. He suddenly felt a little scared. "Xiao Ma, I said that this is a misunderstanding. Why are you so stubborn?" Qin Fan was starting to feel a little unhappy. Ma Hongxing couldn't threaten him at all. The reason why he didn't make a move just now was because of their relationship as master and disciple. Otherwise, Qin Fan wouldn't have said so much to Ma Hongxing. "Cut the crap. The hatred of stealing my wife is irreconcilable. Qin Fan, you deserve to die." Ma Hongxing was already blinded by hatred. After shouting at Qin Fan, he pointed his weapon at Leng Shui. "Hurry up and return my son to me." Leng Shui didn't immediately reply to Ma Hongxing. Instead, he looked at Qin Fan and said, "Master, if you don't get rid of him, you will have endless troubles in the future." Qin Fan closed his eyes and thought for a moment. After a while, he opened his eyes and said to Leng Shui, "Return Xiao Ma's son to him." "Master," Leng Shui wanted to persuade him. "I said return Xiao Ma's son to him." Qin Fan repeated, There was an unquestionable tone in his voice. Yes. Lung Xuan nodded and passed the baby in his arms to Ma Hongsheng. Ma Hongsheng took his son and comforted him softly before leaving hurriedly. Although he couldn't wait for Qin Fan to die, he was more worried about his son. Although Qin Fan was a cripple, his killer disciple wasn't simple. Even if Ma Hongsheng wasn't afraid of death, he had to think for his son. Master, I won't disturb you any longer. I still have something to do. After seeing Ma Hongsheng leave, Lung Shui suddenly bid farewell to Qin Fan. Qin Fan opened his mouth and wanted to say something. However, he didn't say anything in the end. He saw the hatred in Ma Hongsheng's eyes before he left. The reason why he didn't harden his heart was because Tantai Yaoyue and Moon Nanji were present. Qin Fan didn't want to show his ruthless side in front of them. Qin Fan could guess Lung Shui's intention when he suddenly bid farewell. However, he didn't stop him and pretended that he didn't know anything. Anyway, this matter was Lung Shui's own decision. It had nothing to do with him. Qin Fan comforted himself in his heart. After bidding farewell, Lung Shui left directly. He didn't say goodbye to the other disciples and pretended that he didn't see them. Qin Fan collected his thoughts and looked at Wang Haoren with a gloomy expression. Now we can settle our matter. Old man Xiao understood and went to a room to call Xiao Yifeng out. Wang Haoren was fearless. Therefore, he didn't use his X-ray vision to check the surroundings. He felt that there wouldn't be any danger. Naturally, there was no need to do so. Only now did he know that Xiao Yifeng was also there. At this moment, the dazed look in Xiao Yifeng's eyes had almost completely disappeared. He looked at Wang Haoren with eyes full of endless hatred. Amidst this hatred, there was also a sense of satisfaction from the impending revenge. Grandmaster Qin Fan had reached the pinnacle of martial arts and became a land immortal. He could be said to be invincible. With his grandmaster's support, Xiao Yifeng was naturally fearless. Wang Haoren, it would be the biggest mistake in your life if you didn't kill me directly back then. Xiao Yifeng laughed crazily. Chapter 598. Wang Haoren looked at Xiao Yifeng's insolent laughter and knew that he was no longer an idiot. He could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Qin Fan's medical skills are not bad. He can even cure you. Haha, do you regret it now? Xiao Yifeng asked. Qin Yunhan and I are very happy. Wang Haoren did not directly answer his question and instead evaded it. After Xiao Yifeng heard those words, that disfigured face of his started to distort, becoming sinister and terrifying. Qin Yunhan was his obsession. At that time, Wang Haoren had a bad taste and recorded some of Qin Yunhan's clapping and played it for Xiao Yifeng. At that time, it directly caused Xiao Yifeng's mentality to explode, and he lost his identity as the main character. Even though this matter had passed for a long time, when Wang Haoren brought it up again, Xiao Yifeng was still very mad. Tantai Yaoyue and Moon Nanji heard the name Qin Yunhan and knew that this might be another story, and the situation was similar to theirs. While they were amazed at their boyfriend's charm, they were also incomparably resentful. Their eyes fiercely swept over Wang Haoren. But that was it. Right now, the surrounding atmosphere was incomparably tense. Tantai Yaoyue and Moon Nanji naturally could not dwell on this matter. You despicable person, back then you plotted against me. Now it's time to pay your debt. Xiao Yifeng angrily looked at Wang Haoren. I'm indeed despicable, but you're not necessarily any better. Back then, didn't you take the opportunity to knock me out and turn me into a eunuch? An eye for an eye, Wang Haoren indifferently said. Tantai Yaoyue and Moon Nanji heard this and were instantly shocked. Their eyes were filled with dense hostility as they looked at Xiao Yifeng. If Xiao Yifeng succeeded, then what would they do? This matter concerned their lifetime happiness, so of course they could not remain calm. But fortunately, this ugly person did not succeed. You had ulterior motives towards Qin Yunhan. I only did that to protect Qin Yunhan. Xiao Yifeng argued. What a joke. Is Qin Yunhan yours? I'm just a little closer to her, and you want to harm me? Reason does not speak like that. Wang Haoren coldly laughed. Although Xiao Yifeng's brain was cured, compared to before, it was still a lot slower. Compared to before, he was a lot. For a moment, he could not outspeak Wang Haoren and was at a loss for words. Qin Fan suddenly said, Yifeng's matter. You can say that it's revenge, but what about me? Why did you plot against me? Why? When Qin said this, Qin's words as words. They all knew that Qin Fan was injured, but they didn't know that it was related to Wang Haoren. However, the two of them found it hard to believe. Master, is there some kind of misunderstanding here? Haoren is just an ordinary person. Tantai Yaoyue hurriedly defended Wang Haoren. Yifeng also knows a bit of martial arts. Wang Haoren was able to plot against Yifeng. How could he be an ordinary person? Qin Fan said. Tantai Yaoyue had already deduced this point, but she deliberately ignored it. She wanted to defend Wang Haoren. Since Qin Fan had pointed out this point, Tantai Yaoyue could only change her angle and continue. Even if Haoren knows a bit of martial arts, compared to you, he is too far away. This is absolutely impossible. That's right. Master, with your ability, how could you be plotted against by Haoren? Mu Nanji also questioned. That's because he hit it too deeply. Qin Fan looked deeply at Wang Haoren and said, Do you have something to say? Or do you want to make up some lies? You're right. I plotted against you. Wang Haoren said frankly. Before, he had no choice but to use all kinds of fake faces and lie. But now there was no need for that. Tantai Yaoyue and Mu Nanji were shocked when they heard this. It's good that you're willing to admit it. It saves me from wasting my breath. Qin Fan's eyes were incomparably cold. He stared at Wang Haoren and asked, Why did you plot against me? Tantai Yaoyue and Mu Nanji looked at Wang Haoren doubtfully, waiting for his reply. It's almost time to eat. Song Zhihui suddenly ran into the hall and was about to inform everyone to start eating. But soon, she felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange. Halfway through her words, she stopped. Wang Haoren glanced at Song Zhihui and then replied to Qin Fan. It's very simple. Because you have ideas about Yaoyue, Nanji, and Zhihui. Is this reason enough? You and Zhihui also. Qin Fan's eyes widened in shock. Yes, Zhihui is also my girlfriend. Wang Haoren said. Ding! Host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 3,000 villain points. Qin Fan protagonist aura minus 150. Host villain aura plus 150. Tantai Yaoyue and Mu Nanji looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Just now, they knew there was a girl called Qin Yunhan, and now there was Song Zhihui. How many girlfriends did this boyfriend of theirs have? Song Zhihui was confused. She didn't understand the situation, but now was not the time to ask questions. She just stood with Tantai Yaoyue and Mu Nanji. In the hall, one side was Qin Fan's camp, the other side was Wang Haoren's camp. Both sides were facing each other. Qin Fan took a deep breath and suppressed his emotions. He asked Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui in a low voice. Wang Haoren plotted against your master. Are you going to help him deal with me? This disciple doesn't dare to be disrespectful, but if master wants to touch Haoren, I will not agree. Tantai Yaoyue was the first to express her stance. Tantai Yaoyue naturally knew that Qin Fan had ideas about her. Although she didn't agree with Wang Haoren going against Qin Fan, since it had already happened, Tantai Yaoyue wouldn't blame him. Ding! Host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 2,000 villain points. Qin Fan protagonist aura minus 100. Host villain aura plus 100. Seeing Tantai Yaoyue's stance, Qin Fan's heart was filled with panic. He gritted his teeth and looked at Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui. Master, I'm very grateful for your teachings, but if you want to harm Haoren, then please forgive this disciple for being disrespectful. Mu Nanji said. Me too. Song Zhihui hurriedly chimed in. Qin Fan's craftsmanship had caused such a big commotion, so they naturally knew that Qin Fan was a dirty person. But because Qin Fan had been cut off and was too pitiful, they cared about the grace of teaching him, so they didn't care about the past. They truly treated Qin Fan as their master and ignored Qin Fan's filthiness. But now that Qin Fan wanted to deal with Wang Haoren, it was a different story. Because in their view, they didn't doubt what Wang Haoren said about Qin Fan having special thoughts about them. Wang Haoren did these things because he cared about them, although his actions were a bit extreme. But they still chose to stand on Wang Haoren's side. Ding! Host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 1,000 villain points. Qin Fan protagonist aura -50. Host villain aura +50. Ding! Host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 2,000 villain points. Qin Fan protagonist aura -100. Host villain aura +100. Ding! Host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 3,000 villain points. Qin Fan protagonist aura -150. Host villain aura +150. You are all my good disciples. Qin Fan gritted his teeth. Chapter 599. Junior sister, I thought you could distinguish right from wrong. I didn't think you were all so muddle-headed. Do you know what this is called? Deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors. Old man Xiao saw the attitude of Tantai Yaoyue and the others and couldn't help but scold them. Tantai Yaoyue and the others didn't care. In this matter, there was no right or wrong. It was just that everyone had their own position. Senior brother Xiao, I know you are very strong, but if you want to preach, then don't. Tantai Yaoyue said. Junior sister, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Turn back to the shore. Old man Xiao persuaded. Turn back? How can I turn back and help you kill my beloved? Tantai Yaoyue sneered. Since you are so stubborn, don't blame me for being impolite. Old man Zhao's voice suddenly became cold. At the same time, the true qi in his body revolved, his white hair fluttering without wind. Qin Fan raised his hand, indicating for him to not act, then looked at Tantai Yaoyue with a complicated expression, playing the emotional card. Have you really thought it through and want to break off your relationship with your master? I also don't want to, but if master wants to harm Howren, then I can only do this. But if master is willing to listen to me, then perhaps there is still room for negotiation. Tantai Yaoyue said. Tell me. Qin Fan's eyes brightened slightly. Tantai Yaoyue didn't immediately reply to Qin Fan. Instead, her expression became serious, asking Wang Howren, if I ask you to apologize to my master, are you willing? She actually didn't want Wang Howren to suffer, but she felt this matter was a bit strange. If she fell out with Qin Fan, then there might be danger. Her ability was taught by Qin Fan. In other words, Qin Fan knew how much ability she had, and Qin Fan's cultivation was crippled. But after seeing her attitude, he still wasn't willing to let this matter go. Senior brother, Xiao, majored in medicine. Although he wasn't weak in martial arts, there was still a gap between him and her. Plus, Wang Howren wasn't weak either. After all, he was able to succeed in scheming against Qin Fan. Tantai Yaoyue knew she couldn't do this. She and Wang Howren were two martial arts experts. On the surface, it was obvious that they could crush Qin Fan's side. But even so, Qin Fan still had the attitude of wanting to deal with Wang Howren. Tantai Yaoyue keenly felt that Qin Fan should have something to rely on. Although she didn't know what Qin Fan was relying on, Tantai Yaoyue knew that if this continued, it wouldn't be good for her side. If I apologize and your master is willing to shake hands with me, then that's not a bad idea. After all, she has always taught you. Wang Howren seemed to be very friendly. Of course, there was a reason why he said that. Firstly, Wang Howren was certain that Qin Fan would definitely not agree to this. Secondly, Wang Howren hoped that Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui would feel better. This was because there was a huge difference between taking the initiative to deal with Qin Fan and taking the initiative to deal with Qin Fan passively. Tantai Yaoyue smiled, thinking that Wang Howren understood and saw that something was wrong, so he chose to temporarily lower his head. Master, what do you think? Tantai Yaoyue asked. Absolutely impossible. Qin Fan interrupted Tantai Yaoyue. His tone left no room for discussion. He then said in a threatening tone, coldly, Today I must kill Wang Howren. Yaoyue, Nanji, Zhihui, if you dare to stop me, don't blame me for not caring about your relationship. Tantai Yaoyue took a deep breath, knowing that there was no turning back. Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui also understood this point. The two of them didn't have the strength to trust a chicken and didn't know martial arts. They were completely at a loss, so they couldn't help but look at Tantai Yaoyue to see her reaction. Tantai Yaoyue suddenly knelt on the ground. Master, this is the last time I call you this. From today onwards, Our relationship is severed. After saying that, she kowtowed 3 times to Qin Fan, repaying Qin Fan for teaching her. Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui also did the same. Ding! Host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 4,000 villain points. Qin Fan protagonist aura -200. Host villain aura +200. Good, good, good. Qin Fan was so angry that he laughed, saying good 3 times in a row. Master, let me clean up the sect for you. Old man Xiao saw the attitude of his 3 junior sisters, and his killing intent exploded. He coldly looked at Tantai Yaoyue and the others. He wasn't Qin Fan, just an old man. He didn't covet Tantai Yaoyue and the others, so he naturally wouldn't have any feelings of pity for them. What he wanted to do was to take revenge for his only disciple, Xiao Yifeng. He wanted to kill Wang Haoren and kill anyone who tried to stop him. The commotion in the hall attracted the attention of the servants in the mansion. Qin Fan had Xiao Yifeng dismiss everyone. Xiao Yifeng accepted the order and dismissed the servants. After that, he hurriedly returned to the main hall. He hated Wang Haoren to the bone and naturally wanted to see Wang Haoren's miserable end with his own eyes. Only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Tantai Yaoyue saw that Qin Fan was about to make a move and immediately prepared. Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui didn't know martial arts and couldn't help, but they didn't leave. They planned to live and die with Wang Haoren. Wang Haoren, I truly admire you. You're able to make my 3 beautiful disciples so unswervingly loyal to you. Qin Fan looked at the 3 people around Wang Haoren and said with a hoarse voice. He was filled with envy, jealousy, resentment, and other complex emotions. I'm quite outstanding in a certain aspect, so of course they wouldn't be willing to leave me. Wang Haoren wanted to take advantage of Qin Fan before he died, so he deliberately messed with his mentality. Tantai Yaoyue heard this and couldn't help but blush. She glanced at Wang Haoren, but in this situation, she couldn't say anything. Mu Nanji thought that Wang Haoren and Mu Nanji hadn't developed to that stage. Hearing Wang Haoren's words, she felt that he was deliberately angering Qin Fan and naturally couldn't expose him. On the other hand, Song Zhihui was surprised. She thought that Wang Haoren was a bit dull when it came to the relationship between men and women. Suddenly saying such a thing really shocked her. She could vaguely see that this naive and dull boyfriend was actually the opposite. She thought that he was a sheep, but in reality, this guy was a wolf. Of course, although Song Zhihui was surprised, she didn't expose him. She chose to remain silent like Tantai Yaoyue and Mu Nanji. To a certain extent, it could be considered a tacit agreement. Thus, when this scene fell into Qin Fan's eyes, it also caused his face to distort malevolently. Ding! Host caused Qin Fan's mentality to be damaged. Received 6,000 villain points. Qin Fan's protagonist aura -300. Host villain aura +300. Wang Haoren, you're at death's door, yet you still dare to anger me. Qin Fan's eyes were blood red. At the same time, the true qi around his body began to revolve. A wave of true qi as vast as the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas wildly surged out from his body. In the hall, gusts of wind rose. Old Man Xiao and Xiao Yifeng's eyes were filled with worship. They looked at Qin Fan with reverence, as if they were worshipping a god. Qin Fan's figure instantly became tall, as if he was a god descending to the mortal world. No one dared to look at him directly. Just a glance was enough to make one's body tremble. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui's faces instantly became pale. This wave of true qi, as vast as the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas, was truly terrifying. Qin Fan still hadn't made a move. He was just standing there, but the pressure coming from him made it difficult for them to breathe. Chapter 600. Peak of Martial Arts. Land Human Immortal, UY. Tantai Yaoyue's face became paler. She thought that Qin Fan's strength was high enough, but she didn't expect this situation. She thought that Qin Fan had the help of other martial arts experts, but who knew that Qin Fan's biggest support was himself. But in this shock, Tantai Yaoyue couldn't help but be confused. Before this, Qin Fan's true energy cultivation was only around 400 years. Now, his true energy cultivation had skyrocketed to 500 years, making him a human immortal of Earth. This was simply unbelievable. When my Sifu was looking for medicinal herbs, he found the body of a demigod by chance. From it, he found a top-tier martial arts technique called the Heaven Patching Secret Record. My Sifu's talent in martial arts is unparalleled in this world. After practicing it for 10 days, not only did his Dantian recover, but he also improved his martial arts. Xiao Yifeng couldn't help but take over the conversation and make his presence known. He wanted to anger Wang Haoren at the same time, because if it wasn't for Wang Haoren, his master wouldn't have gone to find medicine, and his master wouldn't have obtained the technique. In the end, Wang Haoren would have to eat the bitter fruit that he had planted. After saying this, Xiao Yifeng looked at Wang Haoren and saw that he seemed to be sighing. Xiao Yifeng felt very pleased in his heart. He only thought that Wang Haoren was regretting and couldn't help but laugh out loud a few times. Not only does the martial path advance greatly, but this heaven-mending secret record can also mend the body's defects and allow the things that are lost to grow back. Qin Fan saw that Xiao Yifeng didn't get to the point, so he couldn't help but add a sentence. And this sentence was mainly for Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui to hear. It was just that Qin Fan was simply overthinking things. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui didn't care about this at all. Whether Qin Fan was a eunuch or not, what did it have to do with them? Qin Fan quickly saw this point, and jealousy grew in his heart. He wanted to cut Wang Haoren into pieces, but he didn't do it immediately. Instead, he said to Wang Haoren like a cat playing with a mouse, "You only have one chance to live now. If you're willing to clean house for me and kill Yaoyue, Nanji, and Zhihui, I'll be merciful and let you live." He still had feelings for Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui. Even if they were really touched by Wang Haoren, he was still willing to accept them. But Tantai Yaoyue and the other two still had feelings for Wang Haoren. Qin Fan obviously wanted to drive a wedge between them. If Wang Haoren really dared to attack, Tantai Yaoyue and the other two would be very disappointed in him. In order to live, he had the thought of killing his own woman. This was enough to make Tantai Yaoyu and the others feel disheartened. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would be able to see through Qin Fan's thoughts. But in a life-and-death situation, under the urge of survival, one's reason would become much weaker. Even if they knew that the possibility was small, some villains might really try and see if they could grasp a chance of survival. But was Wang Haoren an ordinary villain? Moreover, Wang Haoren's life-and-death situation was only Qin Fan's wishful thinking. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui were nervous. Their gazes all looked at Wang Haoren at the same time. They understood Qin Fan's intention, but they didn't point it out, because they all wanted to know what Wang Haoren's feelings for them were. If Wang Haoren really wanted to kill them in order to live, then he really didn't trust them. Under the nervous gazes of Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui, Wang Haoren said affectionately, "The three of you are very good. I love all of you very much. For any one of you, I can sacrifice my own life. Because of me, all of you fell out with Qin Fan. You are very loyal to me. I would rather die than hurt you." When Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui heard this, the nervousness in their hearts disappeared. Ding! The female lead Tantai Yaoyue's favorability towards the host has increased by 10. Current favorability is 90, until death do us part. Ding! The female lead Mu Nanji's favorability towards the host has increased by 10. Current favorability is 80, until death do us part. Ding! The female lead Song Zhihui's favorability towards the host has increased by 20. Current favorability is 70, until death do us part. Ding! The host has influenced the plot. Received 7,000 villain points, minus 350 Qin Fan protagonist aura, plus 350 host villain aura. After Wang Haoren received the system notification, he suddenly took a few steps forward and hugged and kissed Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui for a while. Although the environment was not suitable, Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui's hearts were filled with tenderness. They didn't care too much and cooperated with Wang Haoren. After the intimate interaction, they held hands and faced Qin Fan with firm eyes. It was clear that they planned to live and die together. Ding, the host has damaged Qin Fan's mentality. Received 6,000 villain points, minus 300 Qin Fan protagonist aura, plus 300 host villain aura. Qin Fan's face was a bit distorted. His original intention when he said those words was to make Wang Haoren and Tantai Yaoyue be at odds with each other. However, he never would have thought that it would imperceptibly help Wang Haoren. Qin Fan looked at the firm gazes of Tantai Yaoyue and the others and knew that he couldn't separate them from Wang Haoren. After coming to this conclusion, Qin Fan didn't want to continue talking. The hatred in his heart rose without limit. The true qi that was like the mountains and seas covered the earth as it pressed towards Wang Haoren. In the hall, a fierce gust of wind once again rose. The chandelier on the ceiling swayed incessantly. The tables and chairs also rubbed against the ground, making different ear-piercing sounds. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, Song Zhihui, and even Old Man Xiao and Xiao Yifeng felt their bodies being restricted by the true qi that filled the hall. They couldn't move for a while. Even if they wanted to move a finger, they felt it was abnormally difficult, let alone other movements. Wang Haoren, after you die, I will take good care of Yaoyue and the others. Qin Fan had suffered so much in his heart and also wanted to fight back. However, he found that Wang Haoren's expression didn't have the panic of facing danger. Instead, it was a bit of ridicule. Qin Fan was a bit confused and couldn't help but frown. Wang Haoren was calm and collected. He let go of Tantai Yaoyue's hand and took a step forward. The true qi that restricted Tantai Yaoyue and the others from moving completely retreated. Even the true qi that filled the hall also flowed back into Qin Fan's body. In an instant, the wind stopped and the sound stopped. Qin Fan's expression was pale. He felt the true qi that flowed back uncontrollably. Because of this, his heart was also beating like a drum. When one's cultivation reached the pinnacle of the martial path, true qi had a trace of spirituality and could sense danger. Is it not good to be alive? Wang Haoren looked at the pale Qin Fan and lightly asked. Chapter 601. Wang Haoren's words appeared to be as light as a feather. However, when they landed in Qin Fan's ears, it caused his heart to tremble violently. After Qin Fan reached the pinnacle of martial arts and became a land immortal, he felt that he was invincible in the world. But the feedback from his true energy told him that Wang Haoren was very dangerous. But Qin Fan still did not give up. The pinnacle of martial arts was land immortal. Could it be that there was a realm above land immortal? This had already subverted his understanding. With this doubt, Qin Fan forcefully circulated his true energy. An almost solid true energy stream rushed toward Wang Haoren. Wang Haoren stood in place without moving. When a stream was a few meters in front of him, it automatically dissipated and disappeared without a trace. If Qin Fan had still been doubtful about the danger of the true energy response just now, the scene before his eyes had completely dispelled his doubts. Qin Fan knew that he was no match for him. Seeing that his attack did not have the slightest effect, he decisively chose to retreat. However, when his figure was about to escape the door of the hall, he felt that he had hit an impassable, invisible wall. He was actually unable to pass through it. Qin Fan turned around in shock. He saw that Wang Haoren's feet suddenly left the ground and slowly floated up. The seven-color divine light released by the spirit energy was emitted. A golden wheel condensed behind his head, looking extremely dazzling. The current Wang Haoren looked like a god, making people have the urge to prostrate themselves on the ground and worship him. When Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui saw this, their eyes reflected the seven-color divine light, revealing some indescribable excitement and joy. Old Man Xiao, Xiao Yifeng, and Qin Fan were the opposite. The three of them had extremely ugly expressions, as if their parents had died. This is not a martial arts technique at all. It's definitely not a martial arts technique. Who are you? Qin Fan supported his body preventing himself from kneeling under this pressure. Of course, this is not a martial arts technique. This is the technique of an immortal. Wang Haoran's voice, with the support of spirit energy, was ethereal and vast, like a god judging all living things. Immortal arts. You're actually an immortal. Qin Fan mumbled to himself. He had completely lost the will to resist because this kind of power was not something that he could fight against. Regret rose in his heart. But Qin Fan also understood that it was too late now. However, he didn't show any signs of weeping. Instead, he quietly accepted his death. It was an honor to die at the hands of an immortal. Soon, a beam of spiritual Qi divine light flew out and landed on Qin Fan's body. The blazing divine flames instantly enveloped Qin Fan. Within a few seconds, Qin Fan turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. Ding! Host has killed main character Qin Fan. Reward: 16,000 villain points. Old Man Xiao and Xiao Yifeng were far inferior to Qin Fan. Under Wang Haoran's might, they were already prostrating on the ground, trembling incessantly. Wang Haoran didn't say anything and let the two of them follow in Qin Fan's footsteps. Before long, the spiritual energy converged, and Wang Haoran slowly landed on the ground. Qin Fan, Old Man Xiao, and Xiao Yifeng had already disappeared without a trace, not even leaving behind a speck of dust. Their traces in this world had been completely erased. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui saw that the crisis was resolved. While they were happy, they couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Looking at Wang Haoran, who had returned to his normal appearance, for a moment, they didn't dare to recognize him, because the impact that Wang Haoran brought to them was too great. Immortal, this had already subverted their understanding. But what they didn't know was that Wang Haoran's act had almost exhausted his spiritual energy. It would take a lot of hard work to restore his spiritual energy to its full state. Blue Planet's spiritual energy was thin. It was almost impossible to absorb spiritual energy from the outside world to recover. But fortunately, Wang Haoran cultivated the Devil Emperor's internal scripture and had a special recovery method. However, he had to cultivate the Devil Emperor's internal scripture for at least 10 hours. Actually, Wang Haoran could easily kill Qin Fan and the others. There was naturally a reason why he used such a frightening posture. Because he still owed Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui an explanation. Because of the danger that Qin Fan had brought, they didn't pay attention to it. But now that the matter was resolved, it was time to talk about it. And regarding this, Wang Haoran had already thought about it. Almost exhausting his spiritual energy and creating such a frightening posture to kill Qin Fan was actually just a foreshadowing. You should have a lot of questions in your hearts, right? Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui were silent. But Wang Haoran was the first to break the silence. Hearing this, the three of them nodded one after another. Wang Haoran let out a sigh and explained, "Actually, I am the reincarnation of the immortal emperor, and the three of you are my concubines in my previous life. In my previous life, we encountered a great enemy and perished together with the enemy. After reincarnating, it took me a long time to recover the memories of my previous life. Therefore, I searched all over the world to find you and reunite with you. But the local conditions and customs of the Blue Planet are different from the immortal cultivation world. So I found you and pursued you. However, I didn't dare to tell you about my previous life, so I hid from you. I know this is difficult for you to accept, but this is our agreement in our previous life. Before we perished together with the enemy, we agreed to meet again in the next life. However, your cultivation is not enough, so you can't remember the memories of your previous life after reincarnation." The inspiration for Wang Haoran to fabricate this lie actually came from a novel about the reincarnation of the immortal emperor searching all over the world for his concubines. After he laid his cards on the table with Tantai Yaoyue and the others, he had already planned this matter. On the Blue Planet, his behavior was naturally called scum, but if there was enough reason to explain it, then it was a different matter. After all, in ancient times, the emperor had 3,000 concubines. As an immortal emperor, wasn't it normal to have many women? After Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui heard this, they looked at each other in shock. The reason for that was because what Wang Haoran said was simply too outrageous. But on second thought, didn't Wang Haoran's immortal methods just now also exceed their understanding? I know it's hard for you to accept it for a while, but think back to when we first met. Our fate was already destined. Wang Haoran saw that Tantai Yaoyue and the others were silent, so he reminded them. No wonder the first time I saw you, I was hopelessly in love with you, and even had the thought of marrying no one but you. So it was because of this. Tantai Yaoyu tried to think back, and suddenly realized. Me too. When we first met on the bridge of the Mu King Pavilion, I also felt a sense of déjà vu with you, and I couldn't help but fall in love with you. Mu Nanji recalled and said, Me too. At that time in the car, I only caught a glimpse of you, but after that, I couldn't forget you, Song Zhihui muttered. When Wang Haoran saw the three people's reactions, he secretly laughed. In fact, the source of Tantai Yaoyue and the others' feelings was all because of the Super Peach Blossom Halo. However, mentioning it under such circumstances made them feel that this was fate. Chapter 602. Seeing the reactions of Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui, Wang Haoran knew that this matter was basically settled. However, in order to be more certain, Wang Haoran maintained a solemn expression and continued to ask, Do you believe me now? Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui looked at each other and then nodded at Wang Haoran, no longer doubting him. However, the three of them remembered that Wang Haoran said that he was an immortal emperor in his previous life, and they were concubines, so they couldn't help but feel a little reserved. Although they didn't understand how they got along in their previous life, from the way ancient emperors and concubines interacted, concubines were very cautious in front of the emperor. Wang Haoran saw this and comforted them. You are my concubines, but we are also husband and wife. Don't be too nervous. I won't eat you. Just get along as usual. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui all breathed a sigh of relief. However, Mu Nanji suddenly remembered something and couldn't help but feel a little inferior, lowering her head. Wang Haoran's heart moved. He could roughly guess her thoughts. So he simply said, Nanji, actually, the man who detoxified your poison on Qingling Mountain was actually me. Of course, that matter was purely a freak combination of factors. Speaking of which, it was also our fate. Mu Nanji was stunned for a moment, and a knot in her heart that had been secretly gloomy for a long time was suddenly untied. It turned out that what she thought was a nightmare was actually her fate. It seemed that senior brother Tian Jizi wasn't wrong. Speaking of which, she really had to thank him. If Tian Jizi had said it at that time, perhaps she wouldn't have come to Qingling Mountain. However, Mu Nanji was still a little resentful. She said to Wang Haoran, Then why didn't you tell me? If I told you earlier, I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to accept it, so I planned to find an opportunity to tell you about it. Wang Haoran explained calmly. Mu Nanji tried to think about it, and felt that it made sense. She immediately stopped thinking about it, and was in a good mood. Tantai Yaoyue was obsessed with martial arts. Now that she heard about the immortal Tao for the first time, she couldn't help but be fascinated. After Mu Nanji finished speaking, she immediately asked Wang Haoran, Then in my previous life, I was also an immortal cultivator, right? Was I very powerful? Yes. Wang Haoran nodded. At the same time, he saw the anticipation in Tantai Yaoyue's eyes. Actually, you can also become an immortal cultivator in this life. Nanji and Ji Hui are the same. Hearing this, she couldn't help but be over you. It said was its immortal Tao have immortal cultivation. An immortal cultivation. It was said immortal. This was to women to immortal. More importantly, immortality meant that they could be together with their loved ones forever. This was of it. There was the most. Then quickly teach me the cultivation method. Tantai Yaoyue impatiently said, Are you sure you want to do it now? Wang Haoran asked. Yes, now. Tantai Yaoyue was impatient. What we cultivated in our previous life was a dual cultivation method. Wang Haoran said seriously. Tantai Yaoyue froze for a moment, her face turning red. Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui saw this and snickered. The same goes for you. Wang Haoren looked at the two and added. Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui immediately stopped laughing, and their cheeks turned red. It was unknown what the two were thinking. What should I call you in the future? Tantai Yaoyue suddenly felt conflicted. You all call me emperor in your previous life, but now we're not in the immortal realm, so there's no need to be so particular. Wang Haoren lied without blinking. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui naturally didn't doubt him. But even so, their love for Wang Haoren had a bit more respect. After all, they were concubines, and the title emperor was more or less a deterrent. Haoren, in your previous life, who was the main wife? How many concubines did you have? Tantai Yaoyue asked a question she was more concerned about. I treated them all equally. No one was the main wife. As for the number of concubines, Wang Haoren paused to organize his words, or to be more precise, how to organize his words. After thinking it through, he continued to say, in my previous life, I was a tribulation-passing immortal venerable. In the universe, I'm not the only one with the same cultivation. Immortal Emperor is actually just a title. For example, there's Devil Emperor, Domain Lord, and so on. The general meaning is actually similar to ancient emperors, the master of a region. It's like there are many guas on a planet, but in the immortal cultivation world, this region has become bigger. As the master of a region, a tribulation-passing immortal venerable can rule at least 1,000,000 star fields. In each star field, there are at least tens of millions of planets and countless living beings. These masters who rule over 1,000,000 star fields have at least millions or tens of millions of concubines. In comparison, I have too few, only 3,000 concubines. Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui were stunned for a long time. If Wang Haoren directly said 3,000, they would definitely be a bit angry. But after Wang Haoren explained and compared the masters of other star fields, they suddenly couldn't criticize Wang Haoren. Think about it. In ancient times, an emperor had 3,000 concubines. But how big was the blue planet? And the ancient emperors of the Fire Country only occupied a small part of the blue planet. Judging from the size of the territory and the population base, the ratio of concubines to concubines in the millions was actually reasonable. In comparison, their husbands also ruled over 1,000,000 star fields. Was 3,000 concubines a lot? It was actually not a lot. It was just that they were not used to it because of the blue planet's living environment. But thinking about the number of 3,000, the competition was really too big. However, although they were a bit resentful, their husbands were immortal emperors. What did they do as concubines? They could only think of ways to please and make themselves more favored. How many concubines have you found now? Song Zhihui asked carefully. After reincarnating, you are too scattered. There are only a few dozen of you on the blue planet. In fact, it's difficult for me to find all of them. Some of them may not have successfully reincarnated and their souls directly scattered. It's already a great fortune to be able to find you. Wang Haoren sighed and said with a sorrowful expression. When Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui saw this, how could they dare to blame him? Each of them spoke words to comfort Wang Haoren, and some even threw themselves into his arms, wanting to give him some comfort. In comparison, they were actually more fortunate because at least they could continue their fate with their husbands. They should cherish what they had now. Wang Haoren opened his arms and hugged them. His expression was sorrowful, but his heart was blooming with joy. Tantai Yaoyue and the others' acceptance also allowed Wang Haoren to see some signs of peace in his harem. The immortal emperors reincarnating to find concubines was a wonderful reason. It was simply too useful. Chapter 603. This feast at Hongmen ended just like this with Qin Fan, the old man surnamed Xiao, and Xiao Yifeng being annihilated. After Wang Haoren laid his cards on the table and used the reason of the reincarnation of the immortal emperor looking for a concubine, Tantai Yaoyue, Mu Nanji, and Song Zhihui became harmonious. There was no quarrel at all, and they were even quite harmonious. Of course, The basic condition for this reason to be persuasive was that Wang Haoren was now a cultivator. If he only knew martial arts, things would definitely not go so smoothly. Because of the existence of cultivation, their worldview was subverted, and they accepted some things in this world that were originally unacceptable. Ever since he started cultivating, there were too many conveniences. Now that Tantai Yaoyue and the others were friendly and harmonious, it was an extremely good start. Wang Haoren's heart was already filled with longing. The backyard was bustling with activity, but it was a scene of harmony. Just thinking about it made him full of enthusiasm. After leaving Qin Fan's villa, Wang Haoren first sent Tantai Yaoyue back, and then sent Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui to the Jinhao Hotel. Although Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui both had plans to buy a house, they were still living in the Jinhao Hotel. Now that things were clear, the two also planned to buy a house together. This way, they would have a companion. Otherwise, it would be too lonely. Of course, Wang Haoren agreed wholeheartedly. He even planned to find a villa in his villa area for the two of them to live in. This way, it would be convenient for them to cultivate. Before, he needed all kinds of cover, but Wang Haoren was more confident now. As for Tantai Yaoyue's sisters, except for Bu Fian, the other 6 sisters had accepted each other, and Tantai Yaoyue had made a good start. So Qiu Qianwei and the others would not have any objections. Even if Mu Nanji, Song Zhihui, and the other sisters met, there was nothing to worry about. In addition, there was Feng Xuansu and Ning Aoxue in the villa area. Ning Aoxue was relatively tolerant of this, and she was already cultivating with Wang Haoren, so it was not difficult for her to accept them. As for Feng Xuansu's matter, it had dragged on for a long time. Before this, Wang Haoren had always felt that if he were to acknowledge Feng Xuansu, it would cause trouble in his backyard. But now, he wasn't so worried anymore. Anyway, there was such a good reason. After sorting out his thoughts, Wang Haoren was in a good mood. After sending Mu Nanji and Song Zhihui to the Jinhao Hotel, he started to ask people to look for a house in the villa area where he lived. However, at this moment, a new piece of news suddenly appeared on the internet. It almost took up the headlines of every media outlet in Qingling. Ma Hongsheng, his son, and the driver all died in a car accident. As the richest man in Qingling, one could imagine the commotion he caused. The cause of the accident is currently under investigation. However, Wang Haoren knew that there shouldn't be any problems in this matter. Of course, this was not because it was an accident. On the contrary, it was man-made. As expected, it was done by Qin Fan's disciple, Leng Shui. Wang Haoren couldn't help but sigh. Ma Hongsheng was dead after all. It seemed that burning incense before he went out didn't make the ancestors bless him. In these media news, there was also a video of Cheng Rui crying and fainting after learning about it. Wang Haoren couldn't help but sigh. Cheng Rui's acting was really good. Even if it was him, he might not be much better than her. In this situation, it was inconvenient for him to look for her. He could only wait for the storm to pass. Wang Haoren returned to the villa. Feng Xuansu was overjoyed when she saw him. After not seeing him for more than 20 days, the longing in her heart had accumulated to a terrifying extent. Therefore, Feng Xuansu even ignored the fact that she hadn't acknowledged Wang Haoren yet. She directly threw herself into his arms and greedily felt the warmth in his arms. After a long time, Feng Xuansu calmed down and took a step back. "I'm sorry. I was too happy and forgot that you haven't remembered what happened between us." "Wife, I remember now. Not only do I remember our past in this life, but also our previous lives." Wang Haoren looked at Feng Xuansu with gentle eyes. After hearing that, Feng Xuansu was stunned for a moment. Then she was overjoyed as if a honey pot had been knocked over. However, she still didn't understand some of Wang Haoren's words. "Our previous lives?" Feng Xuansu asked in surprise. Wang Haoren didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said to a closed bedroom door, "Aoxue, you don't have to eavesdrop. Come here." Feng Xuansu was stunned for a moment and looked over subconsciously. She saw the door suddenly open and Ning Aoxue walked out. "So you were eavesdropping? Then you must have heard him call me wife just now." Feng Xuansu couldn't help feeling a little proud. She only felt that she had won over Ning Aoxue. Of course I heard it. But you're only his wife in name now. Ning Aoshue was also a little proud. She said meaningfully, I've been in Cheongzhou for more than 20 days. Do you know what happened during this period? During this period in Cheongzhou, Wang Haoren, Ning Aoshue, and Feng Yuruo had all established a relationship. Naturally, he couldn't refute it. When he was cultivating with Feng Yuruo, he didn't forget Ning Aoshue at all. Feng Xuansu also heard the deep meaning in Ning Aoshue's words. However, she still didn't believe it. So, she looked at Wang Haoren with a questioning gaze. What Aoshue said is true. Wang Haoren responded. Ding! The host made the female lead Feng Xuansu jealous. The host gained 1,000 villain points. Feng Xuansu pouted her little mouth. She was very jealous. I'll answer your question about our previous lives. Wang Haoren said. His gaze moved from Feng Xuansu to Ning Aoshue. It's also about our previous lives. Feng Xuansu and Ning Aoshue were both puzzled. Then they listened quietly. Wang Haoren used the same words to fool Tantai Yaoyue and the others to fool Feng Xuansu and Ning Aoshue. After listening, the two found it hard to believe at first. However, they finally accepted this fact. Feng Xuansu was both happy and worried. She was happy that she finally recognized her husband. However, she was worried that her husband had more than one wife. However, she soon felt relieved. She was just a little nervous, because after they recognized each other, she had a hunch that something would happen. While she was secretly looking forward to it, she was also a little flustered and scared. When Ning Aoshue first got involved, she never thought that she could monopolize it. Therefore, she was quite open-minded about it. Speaking of which, the two could be regarded as people who lived in seclusion. In seclusion, they kept some ancient traditions, such as having 3 wives and 4 concubines. Their acceptance was actually much higher than that of Tantai Yaoyue, Munanji, and Song Zhihui. Moreover, their husband was an immortal emperor who ruled millions of star regions. It was completely understandable that he had more concubines. It was now evening. Feng Anna was cooking in the kitchen after closing the glass door. She had no idea about the conversation in the hall. After she finished cooking, she called Wang Haoren and the others to eat. In the past, Feng Xuansu and Ning Aoshue would quarrel from time to time when they were eating. However, they did not quarrel today. Instead, they were more enthusiastic and kept putting food in Wang Haoren's bowl. They felt that as the husband of an immortal emperor, he should not like the concubines scheming against each other. Of course, they did not dare to make things difficult for their husband. Feng Anna found it strange. However, she knew her identity very well. Naturally, she did not dare to ask more. She just ate in silence. Another place under the night sky. Seclusion, Blue Cloud Sect. Since Yun Churin left Qingling and returned to the sect, she did not tell her parents about what happened in Qingling because she was depressed. She simply told them that Yin Yun Tian was dead and the engagement was annulled. After Yun Churin's parents learned about this, they began to look for a husband for Yun Churin. They successfully found a sect's young master who was well-matched in terms of social status and arranged a marriage with the other party's elder. This sect's young master was a martial cultivation genius. His future was limitless. After the marriage was arranged, Yun Churin's parents told their daughter about it. Yun Churin's parents thought that their daughter was very obedient and would definitely agree to this marriage. However, Yun Churin turned pale with fright when she heard about it. She told her parents what happened in Qingling. If she were to be engaged to an outsider, she would face the anger of someone whose cultivation level surpassed that of a great grandmaster. However, Yun Churin's parents did not believe it at all. After carefully calculating the forces in the seclusion world, there was no such person as Wang Haoren. Even if he was the young master, he would not let an expert whose cultivation level surpassed that of a great grandmaster be his bodyguard. Moreover, this young master lived in the secular world and did not have a talent for martial cultivation. How could the sect's master rely on such a worthless young master so much? Yun Churin's parents judged that this was a lie their daughter told to avoid the engagement. They would not agree to annul the engagement no matter what. Then, while they were arguing, they suddenly received news. The young master of the sect, who was engaged to Yun Churin, was injured during an adventure. His meridians were damaged, and he could no longer go further on the path of martial cultivation. It was a pity that a genius had fallen. With his meridians damaged, he would be a good-for-nothing from now on. After Yun Charon's parents heard this, they sighed and began to consider annulling the engagement. Chapter 604. Yun Charon did not want to delay any longer. After seeing this, she immediately urged her parents to do it as soon as possible and said that they would go together. Naturally, Yun Charon's parents would not object to this. Logically speaking, Yun Charon should indeed make a trip there. Her parents had no reason to object, so they naturally agreed. Yun Charon heaved a sigh of relief. She prayed that this matter would be over. Otherwise, it would be terrible. Late at night, under the starry sky, in a villa, some unspeakable things were happening. Ding! Host has captured the female lead Feng Xuanzu for the first time. Obtained 8,000 villain points. Feng Xuanzu's female lead Halo -400. Host villain Halo +400. Wang Haoran obtained a considerable amount of villain points and Halo points, but what made him even happier was that he had stepped into level 8 Qi refinement. This speed could be described as taking off. From Yi Fan's memories, Wang Haoran learned that even when Yi Fan rose to prominence in his previous life, he was far from such a cultivation speed. This extreme Heaven Devil Emperor's cultivation method was not simple. It could be said to be wonderful. Not only did his cultivation base increase rapidly, but compared to the boring cultivation methods of other immortal cultivation methods, it was simply too enjoyable. Wang Haoran could not wait to cultivate through the night. However, a certain someone was a little overwhelmed. After all, Feng Xuanzu was the female lead in the main storyline of Yin Yin Tian. She had talent in martial arts, but not in immortal cultivation. Unlike Feng Yuruo, who could use spiritual energy to treat herself with just a little guidance. As for Wang Haoran, in order to scare Tantai Yaoyuan and the others, he had pretended too much when he killed Qin Fan. He had used up too much spirit qi and was currently recovering his spirit qi. It was not appropriate to treat Feng Xuanzu, because a certain amount of spiritual energy would still be needed to treat her completely. If it was just to reduce the swelling and pain, it would not require much spiritual energy. However, there was no need for that at all, because medicine could do that. In fact, Feng Xuanzu was already prepared. She even specially prepared these things. Wang Haoran was speechless. Feng Xuanzu was really good at preparing for a rainy day. Immortal cultivation techniques are truly inconceivable. I can vaguely sense signs of reaching the level of a neutralizing grandmaster. Additionally, my primary energy has also become purer and more solid than before. Even if I were to compare my primary energy with a true neutralizing grandmaster, I would likely not lose out in the slightest. After taking the medicine, Feng Xuanzu felt much more comfortable. She then felt the changes in her cultivation base and exclaimed in surprise. Before this, her cultivation was only at the neutral energy master level. She had only cultivated for an hour, but she had actually made such a huge improvement. Naturally, she was extremely shocked. "That's nothing," Wang Haoran said. "True Qi only represents martial arts. As long as you continue to cultivate, your true Qi will transform into spiritual Qi, and you'll be a beginner cultivator." Feng Xuanzu listened with great yearning, but soon, a look of fear appeared on her face. "I didn't say to continue cultivating right now," Wang Haoran added with a smile. Only then did Feng Xuanzu heave a sigh of relief. However, she glanced around and soon discovered that her husband seemed to be unsatisfied, but he really could not bear to continue enduring the storm. She thought for a moment and suddenly said, "My husband, go and find Ao Xue." Hearing this, Wang Haoran could not help but be surprised. If he suddenly left to find Ning Ao Xue, it might be normal for Feng Xuanzu to turn a blind eye to it. It was really a bit strange that Feng Xuanzu suddenly took the initiative to say so. However, he soon realized that Feng Xuanzu was deliberately acting cute to please him so that he would spoil her more. Sure enough, women were women after all, and they would inevitably have some petty thoughts. She was afraid that they would quarrel with each other, which would make Wang Haoran unhappy, so she used another way to fight. However, for this kind of fight, the biggest beneficiary was Wang Haoran. Wang Haoran could not help but sigh. The excuse of the reincarnation of the immortal emperor was simply too wonderful. Because of this excuse, Feng Xuanzu was given an identity, a concubine. When a concubine faced an immortal emperor, in addition to the love between husband and wife, she also had some reverence due to her identity. Wang Haoran and Feng Xuanzu leaned against each other and talked for a while. When he was about to leave to find Ning Aoshue, his phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and found that the caller ID was Feng Rao. After the death of Yin Yintian and his son, Feng Rao arranged for them to be buried in Qingling Mountain. After that, she met Wang Haoran at the foot of the mountain. In front of a stream in Qingling Mountain, they had some indescribable, beautiful memories. However, after that, Wang Haoran did not go to Feng Rao. After staying in Qingling Mountain for a long time, Feng Rao saw that Wang Haoran did not come to find her, so she did not disturb Wang Haoran's peace. As the master of Fengxi Mountain, Feng Rao left the stall to Qin Yunhan's mother, Feng Yun, for a long time and had to go back. After Feng Rao left for Fengxi Mountain, Wang Haoran contacted her, but the purpose was to let her keep an eye on the movements of the hidden Jianghu, or to be more precise, to pay attention to whether Blue Cloud sect Yinchuan was engaged or not. Feng Rao contacted him in the middle of the night. Was it because she missed him, or was it related to this? Wang Haoran answered the phone with some doubts. I'm not disturbing your sleep by calling you so late, am I? After the phone was connected, Feng Rao's noble and mature voice sounded. No, but why are you still awake at this time? Wang Haoran asked casually. It's lonely in the middle of the night, and I feel empty. I want to find someone to talk to. Feng Rao's voice seemed to be able to stir one's mind. Wang Haoran was stunned for a moment and subconsciously looked at Feng Xuanzu next to him. He saw that she was looking at him with a suspicious gaze. Feng Xuanzu was next to him, so she could naturally hear what Feng Rao said on the phone. Sister, do you want me to talk to you? Feng Xuanzu could not help but say into the phone. On the other end of the phone, Feng Rao suddenly heard Feng Xuanzu's voice. Her whole body quivered, and she immediately lost the thought of stirring up people's hearts. With some surprise and doubt, she quickly asked, Xuanzu, you two are now... Yes, we've acknowledged each other now, Feng Xuanzu replied. Then congratulations. Feng Rao congratulated her and immediately said solemnly, I was just joking. I'm looking for Haoran in the middle of the night because there's something else important. When Wang Haoran heard this, he immediately asked, Is it related to Yun Chuan? Feng Rao replied, Yun Chuan is engaged to the young master of a sect called Seven Stars Sect. Wang Haoran was a little impressed by Yun Chuan's courage. He had warned her so back then, but she did not take his words seriously. However, in order to confirm, Wang Haoran asked again, Is this true? It's absolutely true. Feng Rao replied affirmatively. After a pause, she suddenly added, However, the young master of Seven Stars Sect encountered a dangerous situation when he went out to train. His meridians were injured, and he has no chance of martial arts in the future. I don't know what the Blue Cloud sect will do next. Chapter 605. After hearing Feng Rao's words, Wang Haoran could not help but speculate. According to the following development, was Yun Chuan going to break off the engagement? Then, the young man whose meridians were injured and had no fate with martial arts would feel angry and shout, Life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully the young man because he's poor. Wang Haoran was too familiar with this plot. This was the famous opening scene of many novels, commonly known as the marriage breakup. Wang Haoran guessed and felt that it should be close to the mark. If this happened to an ordinary person, it would be hard to say, but Yun Chuan was the female lead. If something like this happened to the female lead, it was most likely related to the main character. And the young master of the Seven Stars Sect was the main character. Do you know where the Blue Cloud sect is? Wang Haoran wanted to see this scene, and at the same time, he wanted to find Yun Chuan. Previously, he was too busy to take care of Yun Chuan and was afraid that it would make the backyard even more chaotic. But now, there was no need to worry about this. Secondly, he had to deal with the main character who was engaged to Yun Chuan. He tricked Tantai Yaoyue into being the reincarnation of the immortal emperor, but he did not forget his identity as a villain. Do you want to go to the Blue Cloud sect? Feng Rao asked. Yes, tell me how to get there, Wang Haoran replied. The Blue Cloud sect is deep in the mountains. Ordinary people can't find it all. Even if I tell you, you won't be able to find it, Feng Rao said naturally. How about this? You went to the Phoenix Stream platform at the foot of the Phoenix Stream mountain to pray for blessings last time. You can go there directly. I'll personally take you to the Blue Cloud sect. Feng Rao's words were very serious, and no one could tell what she meant. But how could Wang Haoran not guess Feng Rao's thoughts? Feng Rao's favorability towards him was already full. Wang Haoran didn't even need to think to know that she wanted to eat him even in her dreams. Wang Haoran was a little afraid to be alone with Feng Rao. After hearing her words, he did not immediately respond. Instead, he covered his phone and whispered to Feng Xuansu. Do you know how to get to the Blue Cloud sect? No. Feng Xuansu shook her head. Wang Haoran felt a little helpless after hearing this. He definitely had to go to the Blue Cloud sect, but if Feng Rao didn't lead the way, he wouldn't be able to go there for a while. After thinking for a while, Wang Haoran could only say, then let's meet at the Phoenix Stream Terrace tomorrow. I want to go to the Blue Cloud sect as soon as possible. I have something important to deal with. All right, I will wait for you at the Phoenix Stream platform tomorrow. Feng Rao's voice slightly trembled, revealing her unconcealable excitement. Wang Haoran naturally understood. Feng Xuansu did not know that the two of them had an ambiguous relationship, so she did not find it strange. Moreover, she had felt it today, so she wouldn't deliberately dwell on it. If it was in the past, she might have gotten to the bottom of it. However, after learning that her husband was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor and she was a concubine, she didn't dare to ask about her husband's matters. If she made her husband unhappy and her husband stopped doting on her, that would be bad. Wang Haoran ended the call with Feng Rao. He talked with Feng Xian Sun Wan for a while and then went to Ning Aoshue. After cultivating for a night. In the early morning, Wang Haoran was still in high spirits and embarked on the journey to the Phoenix Stream Terrace. In the middle of the morning, Wang Haoran arrived at his destination. Feng Rao was already waiting in the main hall of the Phoenix Stream Terrace. Compared to a month ago, Feng Rao seemed to have lost a lot of weight. He didn't know whether it was because of the matter of the Phoenix Stream Mountain or some other reason. However, Wang Haoran's attention soon turned to another part of Feng Rao. When he met Feng Rao before, he did not copy Yi Fan's memory, so his knowledge was relatively shallow. However, after obtaining Yi Fan's memory, the 1,000 years of knowledge and cognition made Wang Haoran understand a lot of things. When Wang Haoran, Feng Yao, Ning Aoshue, Feng Xuansu, and the others cultivated, there was a certain difference in cultivation. This was directly related to their respective physiques. However, although there was a difference, the difference was not big. However, some women's physiques were particularly magical. They were born to be cauldrons. Of course, Wang Haoran cultivated the Devil Emperor's internal scripture and studied yin and yang, which was beneficial to both sides. It was not a one-sided plunder. Even so, women with such magical physiques were still of great benefit to cultivators of the Devil Emperor's internal scripture. For example, if the cultivation obtained from cultivating with Feng Yurao was 1, then the cultivation obtained from cultivating with Feng Rao might be 10. 1 Feng Rao was equivalent to 10 Feng Yurao. The difference was not small. What was even more amazing was that after careful observation, Wang Haoran found that Feng Rao's virginity was still there. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be there. After all, Feng Rao had been married before and had a son so old. However, when Wang Haoran thought about it, he quickly understood the reason. Virginity was not something that would be lost after doing that kind of thing. This was closely related to the feelings and emotions of the woman at that time. If the woman felt very happy mentally and physically, then it would definitely be gone. For example, none of the female leads who had a deeper relationship with Wang Haoran. Moreover, most of them were things that happened before Wang Haoran cultivated the Devil Emperor's internal scripture. In fact, Wang Haoren had wasted a lot of his cultivation. However, there was nothing he could do about it. After all, Wang Haoren himself did not know that he would obtain such a cultivation technique one day. The reason why Feng Rao still existed was that she had no feelings for Yan Feiping. She just wanted to continue the descendants of Feng Xishan. As for why Feng Rao's physique was more suitable than Feng Yuruo's to cultivate that cultivation technique, it was not unexpected. Feng Yuruo was the only female lead in Yi Fan's plot, and Yi Fan would cultivate the Azure Emperor's secret art of longevity in the future. It was normal for Feng Yuruo to not have that kind of physique. After all, Yi Fan would not cultivate that kind of cultivation technique. Therefore, in the setting of Feng Yuruo, the female lead, that kind of unnecessary physique would not be added. As for the supporting female lead, Feng Rao had such a physique. This might be because in some plots of Yan Yuntian's main plot, there would be evil cultivators who took a fancy to Feng Rao's physique and had evil intentions. To put it bluntly, Feng Rao's physique was completely to attract hatred and then let Yan Yuntian show off and slap him in the face. In martial arts, there was actually a dual cultivation technique, but compared to the cultivation level, it was much weaker. However, Yan Yuntian was already dead, so this kind of plot would not appear. However, after Wang Haoren saw this, he could not help but have an idea. It was equivalent to 10 Feng Yuruos. This was a real cultivation. How could he not be tempted? One had to know that when he cultivated with Feng Yuruo for the first time, his cultivation level directly increased by 1 level in the Qi refinement realm. Now Wang Haoren's cultivation level was at the 8th level of the Qi refinement realm. If he continued to cultivate with the other female leads, it would take some time for him to cross the Qi refinement realm. However, if he cultivated with Feng Rao, he might directly skip a level. Moreover, Feng Rao was really beautiful. She had a special charm and noble temperament that the female leads around him did not have. Wang Haoren felt that he might have to imitate Boss Chow. Chapter 606. Wang Haoren temporarily put away his thoughts and looked at Feng Rao's expression. He saw Feng Rao looking at him. Her eyes were shining. He didn't know what she was thinking. Then, she broke the silence and said with some emotion, "Do you still remember? This is where we first met." "Of course." Wang Haoren nodded. Feng Rao only mentioned it, but she didn't continue the topic. Instead, she changed the topic and said, "Congratulations on reuniting with Xuanzu. As her sister, I really should congratulate you. If there's a chance, I'll go back to Fengxi Mountain with Xuanzu in the future. After all, it's Xuanzu's home." Wang Haoren said, "Thank you." Feng Rao smiled and asked curiously, "Why are you going to the Blue Cloud sect to find Yun Churen? It's a little complicated. I'll explain it to you later. Let's not ask so many questions now. Let's go." Wang Haoren said, "Okay." Feng Rao nodded obediently. Then, she got up from her seat and walked toward Wang Haoren while swaying her waist. The aura of a noble and domineering elder sister gushed over, causing people to feel restless. Wang Haoren immediately felt an indescribable strange impulse from his soul to his body. Before he cultivated the Demon Emperor's internal scripture, he wouldn't be like this. After all, as an experienced person, his self-control was very good. However, after he cultivated the Demon Emperor's internal scripture, he couldn't help but see a good cultivation partner. When Yi Fan searched the memories of the Extreme Heaven Demon Emperor's disciples and women, the information he got was still a little shallow. He didn't have the experience of a real cultivator of the Demon Emperor's internal scripture. This was because this cultivation method would unknowingly magnify one's emotions. To a certain extent, this cultivation method would urge the cultivator to work harder. When the Extreme Heaven Demon Emperor had the idea of seducing a few Celestial Prime Tao companions, he actually knew the consequences, but he still did it. Part of the reason might be the influence of the Demon Emperor's internal scripture. Of course, from another perspective, there was another benefit. When cultivating with a Tao companion, it could unknowingly magnify the feelings of the Tao companion. In other words, he could make his Tao companion's love for him even deeper. This was also why after Wang Haoren and the female lead cultivated the Demon Emperor's internal sutra, They felt that it was easier to gain favorability. While he was thinking, a fragrant wind blew over, and a peerless figure appeared in his field of vision. However, when the figure was 1 meter away from him, it suddenly stopped and did not continue forward. This distance wasn't too distant, but it wasn't too close either. It could be considered the distance between good friends. It's all mountain roads to the Blue Cloud sect. You're not a martial artist, so you might feel a little strenuous. If you're really in a hurry to go to the Blue Cloud sect, I can take you with me. It'll be much faster this way, Feng AI said. Wang Haoren subconsciously wanted to say that there was no need at all. But after he changed his mind, he did not resist getting close to Feng Rao. So, he took the opportunity to reply. Then I'll have to trouble you, sister. Feng AI was stunned. He was surprised by this address, but he soon realized that it was very reasonable. Feng Xuansu was her younger sister, so it was only right for her younger sister's husband to call her elder sister. At this time, it was not the sacrificial ceremony of Mount Feng Shi, so there were many tourists on the Phoenix Dream platform outside. Feng Rao's identity was quite special. Naturally, she would not show up in public at the foot of Mount Feng Shi, so she put on the light muslin bamboo hat that she had already prepared. Feng Rao, who returned to Mount Feng Shi, did not wear modern clothes. Instead, she wore a palace dress, which looked noble and elegant. Wearing a light muslin bamboo hat was not at all out of place. She looked like a chivalrous woman in a martial arts movie. After leaving the Phoenix Stream platform with Wang Haoren and reaching a place where there was no one, Feng Rao hugged Wang Haoren's waist and jumped up. Wang Haoren only felt that the ground was getting farther and farther away from him. Soon, he reached the top of a tree. Feng Rao tapped the branches and leaves of the tree with the tip of her toes. Her figure paused, and she jumped again. In a few flashes, she was already hundreds of feet away. As the master of Mount Feng Shi, Feng Rao's strength was still very high. Previously, Wang Haoren's cultivation was limited, so he did not see through Feng Rao's background. In addition, Feng Rao did not deliberately make a move. Now that Wang Haoren had become a cultivator, even if Feng Rao did not make a move, she could not hide her cultivation from him. Moreover, Feng Rao used lightness skill, so her genuine Qi foundation was inadvertently revealed. Feng Rao's genuine Qi cultivation was close to 200 years, and she was about to enter the realm of the great grandmaster of elixir strength. Compared to Old Man Zhuqiu of the Zhuqiu family, the head of the top 10 martial arts families in Song State, she was much stronger. However, this was also reasonable. Song State was prosperous in martial arts, but compared to the real top sects in Jianghu, it was still a little inferior. When she jumped up from the tree in the forest, Feng Rao did not do anything that crossed the line. She did not look like she wanted to eat people as before. Instead, she became well-behaved. Wang Haoren was still a little unaccustomed to this. However, he soon realized that Feng Rao had sensed his distance from her. Feng Rao was sad, or maybe she did not want to make things difficult for him, so she acted like this. In contrast, Wang Haoren felt that the possibility of Feng Rao not wanting to make things difficult for him was much higher. He had to admit that Feng Rao was quite sensible, which made him feel a little sorry for her. While sighing, Wang Haoren could not help but feel a little guilty. To be honest, it was quite cruel to Feng Rao to just set the fire and not put it out. After Feng Rao left Qingling and returned to Mount Fengshi, she had obviously lost a lot of weight. Logically speaking, with her cultivation, this should not be at all. It could be imagined that after returning to Mount Fengshi, she was in a depressed mood and missed him too much. Thinking of this, Wang Haoren wanted to comfort Feng Rao. However, he was still a gentleman. After all, a gentleman uses his mouth and not his fists. However, Feng Rao was suddenly attacked. Her mind was disturbed, and her genuine Qi was instantly scattered. His foot, which had just stepped on the tree, staggered. The two of them fell toward the ground, about 20 meters below the ground. Fortunately, Feng Rao raised her genuine Qi in time and used lightness skill again. She lifted herself up and returned to the tree. However, she only stood steadily on the tree and did not continue to move forward. Feng Rao felt the remaining warmth on her cheeks. With some doubt and surprise, she cast her gaze on the handsome face beside her. "Sister, you are really good," Wang Haoran praised, as if he was praising Feng Rao for her quick reaction and not letting the two of them fall into the forest below. "It's just a little lightness skill. There are more powerful ones. Do you want to see them?" Feng Rao's eyes regained some of their usual vigor. Wang Haoran was very familiar with this kind of gaze. To put it simply, this was a gaze that wanted to eat people. Moreover, when Wang Haoran looked at Feng Rao before, he found that Feng Rao was not inconvenienced today. Those annoying relatives did not come to visit. This place was in the forest, where there were no traces of people. No matter how big the commotion, no one would know. Chapter 607. The desire to improve his cultivation level and the thought in his heart intertwined and occupied Wang Haoran's mind. However, this thought did not last long and was quickly suppressed by him. This was because it would be too wasteful if he did that. Although Feng Rao's physique was excellent, to put it bluntly, it was just a seedling. If he wanted to fully realize its value, he would need to cultivate with a specific cultivation technique to let the seedling grow and finally bear fruit. Only by harvesting the fruit, at this time, could he maximize the benefits. If he only looked at the present, Wang Haoran might be able to successfully cross over to the Qi refinement realm, but he would lose the big picture for the small. Moreover, he needed to rush to the Blue Cloud sect to rush to the famous scene of breaking off the engagement. If he really cultivated, he would not be able to finish it in a short period of time and would waste a lot of time. In addition to rushing to the famous scene, Wang Haoran also wanted to try and see if he could intercept the opportunity of the young master of the Seven Stars sect. A famous scene like this, where one broke off an engagement at the beginning, was usually a high martial arts fantasy or high martial arts cultivation plot. The Blue Planet was most likely just a newbie village. If the young master of the Seven Stars sect wanted to rise, he would definitely have a cheat. Moreover, this cheat was definitely not small. It was very likely to be very heaven-defying. According to some plot differences, the time to trigger this cheat was usually before or after the engagement was broken off. If the cheat was triggered after the engagement was broken off, then Wang Haoran would have a chance to seize the opportunity. However, if it was triggered before the engagement was broken off, then he could only remove the hidden danger in advance. This kind of protagonist who had obtained a cheat and rose against the heavens was usually very weak at the beginning, unlike Yi Fan. Although Yi Fan was weaker than Wang Haoran now, he had a big killing move, which was to burn the soul of an immortal and perish together with the enemy. Wang Haoran did not dare to kill Yi Fan for the time being, but the young master of the Seven Star sect should not have such a method. The environment here is pretty good. While he was thinking, Feng Rao, who was next to him, looked at Wang Haoran with charming eyes and suddenly said this. Wang Haoran naturally understood what it meant, but he had already made a decision in his heart. Naturally, he would not do something like not wanting the fruit and eating the seedling instead. It's pretty good, but I have something important to do in the Blue Cloud sect. I can't delay it, so it's better not to look at the scenery. Wang Haoran blinked. If you want to see the scenery, I will see it with you sooner or later. Why are you in such a hurry? Wang Haoran planned to teach her the cultivation method after Yun Charn's matter was over. After all, they had to hurry on with their journey now. It was really inconvenient to talk about these things. When Feng AI heard this, he was overjoyed for a while, and the faint haggard look on his face disappeared, because she could feel Wang Haoran's emotions from his words. Now, he seemed to have stopped resisting and was willing to face his own matters. Okay, we should hurry. Feng Rao was in a good mood, but she didn't dare to delay Wang Haoran's business. She pulled herself together. The distance between Fengxi Mountain and the Blue Cloud sect was only separated by a huge forest. It was not particularly far. Feng AI tried her best to hurry on with the journey. A few hours later, they arrived at the Blue Cloud sect. Feng Rao did not rush up the mountain rashly. She shouted, Feng Rao, the mountain master of Fengxi Mountain, is here to visit the mountain. Her voice was wrapped in true qi, and it shook all the birds and beasts in the forest. It also spread to the top of the mountain. Such a big commotion quickly attracted the people of the Blue Cloud sect. The sect master of the Blue Cloud sect personally came down the mountain to welcome Feng Rao and Wang Haoran up the mountain. The relationship between Fengxi Mountain and the Blue Cloud sect was still very good. Otherwise, the two forces would not have set up a marriage alliance. The antique pavilion stood on top of the mountains, looking majestic and magnificent. In the Blue Cloud sect's living room, Yun Churen's father, the sect master of the Blue Cloud sect, was named Yun Feng. Feng Rao and Yun Feng chatted for a while, then immediately asked to see Yun Churen. Hearing this, Yun Feng's face showed an unnatural expression. After Yin Yuntian's death, he set up a marriage alliance between Yun Churen and the Seven Stars sect. Now that Feng Rao came to visit, Yun Feng could not help but think that Feng Rao was here to cause trouble. However, since Feng Rao was here, this matter had to be resolved no matter what. He informed the disciples to call Yun Churen over. While waiting, Feng Rao glanced at Wang Haoran in confusion. The Blue Cloud sect set up a marriage alliance with the Seven Stars sect so quickly, but Feng Rao would not personally come to find trouble. After all, she was the one who allowed Yun Churen to do this. The matter of meeting Yun Churen was naturally brought up by Wang Haoran on the way. Feng Rao just did as she was told. However, she really did not understand why Wang Haoran came to look for Yun Churen. Was he interested in Yun Churen? However, when they were in Qingling, the little fairy doctor personally checked Yun Churen's pulse and confirmed that Yun Churen was pregnant after the disciple left. Yun Churen quickly came to the living room. Aunt Rao. Yun Churen came to the living room and respectfully bowed as a junior. She was still grateful to Feng Rao. After bowing to Feng Rao, Yun Churen's gaze shifted slightly and fell on Wang Haoran, who was next to her. Panic and fear immediately rose in her heart. When they were in Qingling, Wang Haoran's warning still rang in her ears. If she dared to set up a marriage alliance with someone else, she would kill everyone in the Blue Cloud sect. Now that Wang Haoran suddenly came, it must be about the marriage alliance. Although there was only Feng Rao and Wang Haoran in front of her, Yun Churen felt that Wang Haoran might have brought other experts over. Could it be that today was a disaster for the Blue Cloud sect? Miss Yin, long time no see. You're still as graceful as before. Wang Haoran smiled and took the lead to greet her. Yun Churen could not smile at all and hurriedly explained, "The engagement was decided by my parents on their own. I only found out about it later." These words were easy to misunderstand. Yun Feng and Feng Rao both looked at Yun Churen with strange eyes. Since Wang Haoran became a cultivator, he could observe people to the smallest detail. He could easily tell whether a person was lying or not. Because if a person lied, some subtle changes in their emotions and body could not be hidden from him. He was simply a human lie detector. Wang Haoran could see that Yun Churen was not lying. After making this judgment, Wang Haoran dismissed the idea of finding fault with her. Yun Churen's marriage alliance was inexplicably arranged. This could actually be attributed to the protagonist's halo and the heroine's halo acting up. Yun Churen could not be blamed. Wang Haoran was still thinking about some things between him and Yun Churen. Naturally, he would not give her a cold shoulder. Moreover, not only did he not give her a cold shoulder, but Wang Haoran also intended to continue this misunderstanding. He suddenly stood up from his seat, excitedly grabbed Yun Churen's hand, and said happily, "Churen, I knew this was definitely not your wish." After that, he directly pulled Yun Churen into his arms. Yun Feng, Feng Rao, and Yun Churen were all stunned. Chapter 608. This scene really made one's imagination run wild. Yun Feng and Feng Rao naturally thought in that direction. They felt that Yun Churen and Wang Haoran had an inexplicable relationship. After Yun Churen recovered from her shock, she subconsciously wanted to push Wang Haoran away. After all, the two of them really did not have that kind of relationship. However, before she could do so, she heard a soft voice. "Be good and cooperate." When the voice entered her ears, Yun Churen froze and did not dare to move at all. Wang Haoran only used a voice that Yun Churen could hear. Yun Feng and Feng Rao did not hear anything. After feeling that the act was almost done, Wang Haoran let go of Yun Churen at the right time. Yun Feng was a little unhappy, but he was worried about Feng Rao's face. Before the matter was clarified, he did not immediately flare up. He only frowned. Wang Haoran did not care about what Yin Feng was thinking. He only asked Yin Chuan, what do you plan to do with the seven-star sect? I've discussed it with my parents and decided to break off the engagement as soon as possible, Yin Chuan replied. Then I'll go with you, Wang Haoran said. He came to Yin Chuan to see this scene. If he went with Yin Chuan, he would be able to experience it more realistically. In terms of age, he was about the same as Yin Chuan. They looked like a handsome man and a beautiful woman. If he went with Yin Chuan to break off the engagement, it would definitely cause misunderstandings. This kind of positioning was like the villain beside the woman in the breaking off of an engagement. Of course, in order to better fit into this role, he still needed some settings. After talking to Yin Chuan, he disguised his spiritual qi as true qi and revealed that his true qi cultivation was around that of a neutralizing great grandmaster. As the vital qi quietly circulated, Yin Feng, Feng Rao, and Yin Chuan turned pale with fright. Before this, Feng Rao and Yin Chuan only thought that Wang Haoran was an ordinary person. Yin Feng did not sense any true energy fluctuations from Wang Haoran, so he did not think that Wang Haoran was a cultivator. Yin Feng was the first to react. He chuckled and said, "So you have feelings for Chu Ran. It's all my fault for not noticing it beforehand. If I had known earlier, I definitely wouldn't have arranged Chu Ran's marriage." Just now, she was still a little angry because of Yin Chuan and Wang Haoran's actions, but now her attitude had a 180-degree change. Wang Haoran looked about 18 or 19 years old. Such a martial genius was enough to make Yin Feng overlook those minor details. Feng Rao saw the change of Yin Feng's attitude. She secretly exclaimed that this old man was shameless. Then, he looked at Wang Haoran with resentment. Only now did she know that Wang Haoran was actually a martial artist, and his true qi cultivation was not low. Feng Rao considered herself a genius of martial arts. However, when she was at Wang Haoran's age, she didn't have this kind of cultivation base. However, Feng Rao did not expose him in front of everyone, nor did she come out to interfere with Wang Haoran's matter. "It's fine. It's just an engagement. I can just cancel it." Wang Haoran acted magnanimous. Seeing this, Yin Feng's face was full of smiles. He couldn't help but ask, "May I know which force you are from? Can you tell me?" To be able to achieve this kind of cultivation base at such a young age, talent was one aspect. However, Yin Feng definitely did not believe that he did not have the help of cultivation resources. Moreover, Feng Rao personally brought him to the Azure Cloud sect. To a large extent, it proved that Wang Haoran's identity was not ordinary. However, Yin Feng would never have thought that this 18 or 19-year-old youth had a special relationship with the noble Mount Fengshi's mountain master. "Please forgive me for not being able to tell you. I can only say that Chu Ran will not be humiliated when she's with me." Wang Haoran lied. Seeing that Wang Haoran did not say anything, Yin Feng did not force him. After all, he knew that Wang Haoran's background was not simple. Other than that, it was not particularly important. "By the way, Chu Ran, the matter you mentioned earlier," Yin Feng suddenly thought of something. It was the matter of Yin Chuan breaking her promise to set the engagement and wanting to kill everyone in the Azure Cloud sect. Yin Chuan did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Wang Haoran with a pleading look in her eyes. "What matter?" Wang Haoran pretended not to understand. Yin Feng hurriedly explained. "Oh," Wang Haoran replied. Then he said to Yin Chuan, "You're lying because you want to cancel the engagement with the young master of the seven-star sect, right?" When Yin Chuan heard this, she already knew what to say. She immediately said to her father, "Yin Feng, father, don't worry. I'm just spouting nonsense." "I see." Yin Feng immediately felt relieved. Then he said to Wang Haoran, "If you're in love with Chu Ran, then you have feelings for each other. Since you're in love with my Chuan, why don't you inform your elders and arrange a marriage between our families? What do you think?" Yin Chuan subconsciously wanted to cover her face. It was not because she was shy, but because she felt that her father was too shameless. As his daughter, She felt ashamed. However, her father was calm and did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. There's no rush. We'll talk about it after we go to the Seven Stars sect, Wang Haoran replied. That's good too. Yin Feng nodded and then said impatiently, why don't we set off as soon as possible? I'll write a letter and ask the elders in the sect to bring it to the Seven Stars sect with you. Yin Feng was the first to propose the engagement with the Seven Stars sect. The engagement had just been set not long ago. Yin Feng was afraid that he would lose face if he went personally, so he chose to write a letter. To Wang Haoran, it did not matter whether Yin Feng went or not. The only thing he cared about was that Yin Charan could go. After all, Yin Charan could not be absent from this occasion. There's no need. I'll go with Charan, Wang Haoran replied. Yin Feng hesitated for a moment, but considering that Wang Haoran had the cultivation of a neutralizing strength great grandmaster, he would not be at a disadvantage. So he nodded and said, okay, then we'll do as you say. Yin Charan opened her mouth and wanted to refuse because she was a little afraid of going to the Seven Stars sect alone with Wang Haoran. However, when she thought of Wang Haoran's threat, she could only force herself to shut up and acquiesce. After discussing, Yin Feng immediately wrote a letter. At this moment, Feng Rao found an excuse to call Wang Haoran to a quiet place to talk. Isn't Yin Charan pregnant? Could it be yours? Feng Rao asked in confusion. She could see that Wang Haoran was not the kind of person who liked to take over. Then, the only explanation was that Yin Charan's pregnancy might be related to Wang Haoran. After all, she was very clear about the enmity between Wang Haoran and Yin Yintian. It made sense for Wang Haoran to use Yin Charan's matter to attack Yin Yintian. She's not pregnant. It's just a cover, Wang Haoran explained. But the little fairy doctor has already checked Bien Suan's pulse. How can it be fake? Feng Rao did not believe it. Can't she lie? Wang Haoran asked back. Chapter 609. The fairy doctor, Bien Suan, has noble medical ethics. How could she lie about medical matters? Feng Rao wanted to refute, but she suddenly stopped halfway. As the leader of Mount Fengshi, she had no reason to like Wang Haoran. But such an impossible thing still happened. So what if the fairy doctor was lying? However, Feng Rao couldn't help but suspect the relationship between Wang Haoran and Bien Suan. She asked with some doubts. Then what's your relationship with the fairy doctor? About the same as Xuansu. Wang Haoran had already classified Yin Charan as his cultivation partner. After hearing this, Feng Rao was stunned. She immediately understood a lot of things. It turned out that Bien Suan's treatment of Yin Yintian was arranged by Wang Haoran in secret, and Bien Suan asking for so much treatment fee from Yin Feipeng was probably instructed by Wang Haoran. It seems that I've really underestimated you, Feng Rao murmured. Then, she quickly realized something else and said in surprise, Then why did you go to Mount Fengshi? I didn't go there to pray. I went there because I knew that it was the sacrificial ceremony of Mount Fengshi, Wang Haoran said frankly. To use me to deal with Yin Tian? Feng Rao asked. That's right. Wang Haoran nodded. Feng Rao was a little annoyed. No one would be happy to be used like this. However, this annoyance didn't last long. Soon, it was overshadowed by the love and tenderness in her heart. Then why do you think I'll fall for you? Feng Rao was curious. Of course, Wang Haoran couldn't tell her that it was because of the charm halo. He thought about what he had planned before and simply said, Actually, this is the fate of our previous lives. After meeting again in this life, we naturally fell for each other. Fate of our previous lives? Feng Rao's face was filled with disbelief. Wang Haoran once again used the wonderful excuse of the reincarnation of the immortal emperor. Feng Rao was shocked after hearing this. In order to make Feng Rao completely believe him, Wang Haoran even showed her some immortal cultivation methods. Wang Haoran had already started thinking about this on the way here, because he had to tell Feng Rao something if he wanted to give her the immortal cultivation method. Wang Haoran naturally used the excuse of the reincarnation of an immortal emperor looking for a concubine. So it's fate of our previous lives. No wonder when I saw you for the first time, I couldn't control myself and fell in love with you. Feng Rao was a little surprised, but her face immediately showed some pain. Why didn't we meet earlier? If we had met earlier, I wouldn't have. I'm already unclean now. I don't have the right to be your concubine. If Wang Haoran was just an ordinary person, then Feng Rao wouldn't have this feeling. However, after believing that Wang Haoran was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor, she couldn't help but have some thoughts in her mind. Feng Rao's reaction was out of Wang Haoran's expectation. I reincarnated a little late. After reincarnating, I didn't recover the memory of my previous life immediately. It's inevitable that I missed it. Wang Haoran was a little uncomfortable with Feng Rao's past, but when he thought of the fruits he could get in the future, he felt a little better. Moreover, he was also brainwashing himself, telling himself not to care and to pay respect to Boss Chow. If he couldn't put in his true feelings, he wouldn't get much benefit from cultivating the Devil Emperor's internal scripture. To cultivate the Devil Emperor's internal scripture, both parties needed to love each other and be connected. After brainwashing himself, Wang Haoran comforted Feng Rao and told her that he didn't care and that she shouldn't take it to heart. Then he taught her the immortal cultivation method that was suitable for her. Feng Rao was a martial arts genius. She yearned for martial arts. When she first heard about immortal cultivation, she was also fascinated. She remembered everything Wang Haoran said, but in her heart, she still remembered some of her past in this life and couldn't be happy. When immortal cultivation reaches a certain level, can one be reborn? Feng Rao couldn't help but ask. But after saying that, she felt that she couldn't express her meaning clearly. So she added, I mean from the inside out, completely new, like a kind of rebirth. These words were already considered very clear, and Wang Haoran naturally understood. Feng Rao felt that she was unclean, so she wanted to change her body and be with him. Wang Haoran could understand her thoughts, and if he really did what Feng Rao said, he wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But it would take a long time, although after entering the Qi refining stage, you can be considered a beginner immortal cultivator. Before you reach the soul formation stage, you still have a mortal body. When you reach the soul formation stage, you need to abandon your mortal body and create an immortal body. Because a mortal body can't really withstand the erosion of time, Wang Haoran said slowly. At that time, you can be considered a real new life. The soul formation stage, right? I will definitely reach it. Feng Rao's eyes were full of determination. Wang Haoran couldn't help but smile bitterly, because it would take a really long time to reach this stage. However, if Feng Rao could really reach that stage, then the benefits of cultivating with her could be maximized. The difference in spiritual energy between the few levels of the Qi refining stage and the few levels of the soul formation stage was unimaginably huge. In comparison, it was definitely much more cost-effective to advance to the few levels of the soul formation stage. Of course, this was just an example from the perspective of benefits, because when Feng Rao reached the soul formation stage, Wang Haoran would definitely be in a higher realm. After Feng Rao made her decision, she deliberately kept a distance from Wang Haoran. Even when she knew that Wang Haoran and Yun Churan had left for the Seven-Star Sect and that she might not be able to see him for a long time, she didn't do anything to snuggle up to him before parting. Even when Wang Haoran wanted to hug her, Feng Rao stepped back and avoided him. The reason was very simple. Feng Rao wanted to be reborn and wash away her impurities before coming into contact with Wang Haoran again. Yin Feng had finished writing the letter. Wang Haoran, Yun Churan, and Feng Rao went down the mountain together and soon went their separate ways. The first two went to the Seven Stars Sect, while Feng Rao returned to Fengxi Mountain. It would take nearly a day to travel from the Blue Cloud Sect to the Seven Stars Sect. Moreover, this was under the condition that they would not take any detours. They would cross mountains and rivers when they met them. Along the way, Yun Churan was still quite nervous. At the same time, she had many questions in her heart. During the starry night, Wang Haoran and Yun Churan arrived at an ancient city. The Seven Stars Sect was in this ancient city. However, it was already late, so it was inconvenient to go directly to the Seven Stars Sect. Wang Haoran and Yun Churan found an inn in the ancient city to stay. Wang Haoran was not the main character, so he naturally would not encounter a plot where there was only one room left in the inn and the two of them had no choice but to sleep in the same room. However, Wang Haoren was a villain. Even if there were many rooms left, he could request to stay in the same room as Yun Churen. After all, villains were not upright gentlemen. Would they reason with you? Chapter 610. Under the starry night, the ancient city seemed particularly quiet. There was no ostentation or restlessness like in the city. In a house within the Seven Stars sect's territory in the ancient city, a young man was shouting loudly, venting the unhappiness in his heart. This young man was called Chu Tian, and he was the young master of the Seven Stars sect. He was also the one who had an engagement with Yun Churen. After venting some of his anger, Chu Tian finally calmed down a little. Not long after, there was a knock on the door. Chu Tian originally wanted to ignore it, but he heard a voice outside the door. Tian, it's me. When Chu Tian heard the voice, he knew it belonged to his father, so he went to open the door. Since he was injured, many people from his sect had come to visit him. However, almost all of them were gloating and only came to see him make a fool of himself. Chu Tian's father was naturally not among them. Father. After Chu Tian opened the door, he saw the middle-aged man outside and called out softly, Tian, your face looks very pale. Does the injury on your body still hurt? Chu Tian's father, Chu Zhan, asked his son with concern. Chu Tian smiled bitterly. The pain on his body was nothing, but the pain in his heart was the most unbearable. His martial arts talent was outstanding, and his future was limitless. However, an accident happened when he went out to train, caused his meridians to suffer irreversible injuries, and he would not be able to practice martial arts in the future. This was something that Chu Tian, who wanted to become a powerhouse, could not accept. Chu Zhan could read his son's emotions from his expression, so he hurriedly comforted him. Although no one can repair your meridians in the secluded Jianghu, other than the secluded Jianghu, there are some ancient sects and clans in the world. Any one of them is above the secluded Jianghu. I'll think of a way to go to these ancient sects and clans to ask for divine medicine to heal your meridians. Don't be discouraged. As he spoke, Chu Zhan patted his son's shoulder, wanting to cheer him up. Those ancient sects and clans only exist in some records in the sect's ancient books. Perhaps they don't exist at all. As the young master of the Seven Stars sect, Chu Tian also had the authority to look up some secrets of the sect, so he naturally knew some of the information. Naturally, he felt that the hope was so slim that it could be ignored. It definitely exists. Chu Zhan also knew that there wasn't much hope, but his tone was very certain. Because if he was also so dispirited, then his son would lose even more hope in his heart. Even if they do exist, why would those ancient sects or clans give us the herbs to repair our meridians? Chu Tian changed his perspective and responded to his father's question. As long as you can pay the price, you will definitely be able to get it, Chu Zhan said. I'm already a cripple now. I'm afraid that those old fellows in the sect will definitely not agree to this, especially the Great Elder. Apart from me, the Great Elder's grandson is the most promising candidate to replace me as the young master of the Seven Stars sect and become the next sect master. Chu Tian shook his head and mocked himself. At this point, he recalled some of the things he had heard during the day and continued. I heard that there's a sect meeting tomorrow, but tomorrow isn't the end of the month, so it's not the time for a regular sect meeting. It seems like there's something important to discuss tomorrow. Chu Zhan frowned, thinking that the news spread really fast, but it was useless to deny it. It was the Great Elder who suggested it. Chu Zhan sighed. That old fellow really can't wait. It seems that after tomorrow, my status as the successor of the Seven Stars sect's sect master will be revoked. Chu Tian sneered. His status as the young master was not because he was Chu Zhan's son, but because he was the next sect master of the Seven Stars sect. It won't be that easy for that old fellow to succeed. Chu Zhan could not help but gnash his teeth at the mention of the Great Elder. Although he was the sect master, the Elder's Council's power was not small. In many matters, he had to be controlled by the Elder's Council. Of course, the main reason was that many elders followed the Great Elder's lead. If that was not the case, the Great Elder alone would not dare to be so arrogant. Hearing Chu Zhan's words, Chu Tian fell silent. Given his current situation, he really did not have the face to continue to force himself to stay as the young master. For a moment, Chu Zhan did not know how to comfort him. At this moment, a disciple suddenly came to report, but after seeing Chu Tian, he did not say anything. When Chu Tian saw this disciple, he knew that he was Chu Zhan's confidant and could be trusted. Logically speaking, if there was something important, he should not hide it from him. Puzzled, Chu Tian deliberately said, "I'm still the young master now. Could it be that I'm not liked so soon?" The disciple did not know how to respond, so he looked at Chu Zhan with a questioning expression. Chu Zhan was afraid that if he hid it from his son, it would make his son feel even more uncomfortable. He could only say helplessly, "What's the matter? Just say it." After receiving the order, the disciple immediately reported, "I received news that the Blue Cloud Sect's Yun Charan has just arrived in the ancient city and is currently staying in an inn." After hearing this, Chu Tian frowned. Similar to Yun Charan, he only learned about this matter after he was engaged to an elder. Chu Tian was not too happy about this, but he did not object either. However, Yun Charan had just come to the ancient city after such a thing happened to him. He reckoned that her intentions were not simple. "Tian, maybe Charan just came to visit you and has no other intentions." Chu Zhan also had a vague feeling, but he did not point it out. Instead, he tried to think in a positive direction. If that's the case, why is she avoiding me? I think." Chu Tian looked at the disciple who reported and said with a scrutinizing gaze, "It seems that you didn't tell me everything, right? Did Yun Charan come alone, or did she come with her elders?" If Yun Charan came alone, it could be interpreted as a simple visit. However, if she came with someone else, her intentions were obvious. "Young master is wise." The disciple was shocked and reported helplessly, "There's a handsome young master beside Yun Charan. I can't tell his background for the time being, but his temperament is extraordinary. I reckon his background is not simple. It seems that not only will I lose the position of a young master tomorrow, but I will also lose my beautiful fiancée." Chu Tian sneered sadly. "Tiana." Chu Zhan saw his son's expression and was worried. "Father, I want to be alone for a while." Chu Tian was expressionless and suddenly interrupted Chu Zhan. Chu Zhan did not continue to say anything. He sighed and left worriedly. Chu Tian was the only one left in the quiet room. After calming down for a while, he took out the half-foot-tall black tower that he had hidden in the room. Chapter 6:11. This half-foot-tall black tower was neither gold nor iron, neither stone nor wood. He didn't know what material it was made of. Chu Tian looked at the black tower with sparkling eyes. He had obtained this black tower by chance during his training. At that time, he was besieged by some ferocious beasts in the ancient forest and was seriously injured. He was about to die. However, at this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the void and sucked the ferocious beasts into the void. Through the crack in the void, Chu Tian saw the scene of two people fighting. To be more precise, they couldn't be considered humans but immortals. The aftermath of the battle caused the stars to shatter and the galaxy to reverse. This was beyond the scope of martial arts, and also beyond the scope of humans. The reason why the two immortals were fighting was because they were fighting over this mysterious black tower. However, in the end, the two immortals were both injured and no one gained an advantage. Moreover, the mysterious black tower flew out of the void turbulence and arrived in front of Chu Tian. How could the mysterious black tower that made two immortals fight over it be an ordinary item? At first, Chu Tian was so sure. However, he studied it for a long time and found that he couldn't figure out anything. This black tower looked like an ordinary decoration. However, Chu Tian still didn't give up. He locked the room and continued to study it, trying to find some mechanism. However, after trying for a long time, he still didn't find anything. In anger, Chu Tian threw the black tower out. With a pung, the black tower crashed into the wall and then rolled on the ground, finally rolling under the bed. Just as the black tower was out of Chu Tian's sight, some faint light appeared. However, this light flashed and disappeared without anyone noticing. In the inn in the ancient city, Yun Charan was restless, and her heart was in a mess. From time to time, she would secretly look at Wang Haoren. Wang Haoren leaned against the window, as if he was admiring the night view of the ancient city. There were very few modern things in the ancient city, even fewer than in Song State. This made Wang Haoren feel like he was in a fantasy world. After a long time, Wang Haoren looked away and looked at the restless Yun Sharon. Don't be nervous. I don't eat people. What exactly do you want to do? Seeing that the silence was broken, Yun Sharon carefully voiced her doubts. You don't have to worry about that. You just need to know that I won't harm you. That's enough, Wang Haoren said. Yun Sharon did not even want to believe a single punctuation mark in this sentence. However, on the surface, he did not dare to question anything and only remained silent. You don't believe me? Wang Haoren read some of Yun Sharon's thoughts from her expression. You caused me to lose my reputation. How can I believe you? Yun Sharon asked subconsciously. These words are too serious. I didn't do that to you. It was the fairy doctor who did it to you. Moreover, I already told you last time. Your memory can't be that bad, right? Wang Haoren said. But you made everyone think that I was pregnant in front of others. Isn't this causing me to lose my reputation? Yun Sharon retorted. Come on, the number of people present at that time can be counted with a few fingers. Moreover, 2 of them are buried in the ground. The rest are not gossipy people, Wang Haoren said. It doesn't matter if only one person knows. Yun Sharon still valued her innocence very much and insisted. Hey, do you believe that I'm serious? Wang Haoren frowned. Yun Sharon's face turned pale, but soon she was not so afraid. Instead, she felt relieved. Since I'm traveling with you, I expected this to happen. After saying that, she closed her eyes as if she was going to turn into a wooden puppet and be at his disposal. Wang Haoren was quite tempted. However, Yun Sharon's current feelings for him were far from the level of love. It was not beneficial to his cultivation to do something directly. Moreover, it was very wasteful. He still needed to improve her favorability first. In this regard, Wang Haoren already had some ideas. As the female lead of a broken engagement, Yun Sharon would be slapped in the face in the future in the main plot. She would also fall in love with the protagonist and lick his boots. This change almost came from one point. The good-for-nothing that Yun Sharon abandoned was actually a genius that he looked up to. To put it bluntly, Yun Sharon admired that kind of monstrous martial arts genius. If this kind of worship continued, it would gradually turn into love. Wang Haoren met this condition very well. However, when he was in the Blue Cloud sect, he only showed the cultivation of a neutralizing strength great grandmaster. However, this did not seem to be shocking enough for Yun Sharon. In other words, although she was surprised, because Wang Haoren had done something excessive before, even if she admired him, it was washed away by the hostility in her heart. In order to magnify the admiration in Yun Sharon's heart to the point of overshadowing the hostility, he needed to show more skills. After sorting out all these, Wang Haoren quickly came up with a plan. However, it was not a bad idea to simply show his skills in front of Yun Sharon, but the effect would not be too strong. Wang Haoren had another better plan. After thinking for a while, he suddenly said coldly to Yun Sharon, Yun Sharon, don't think too highly of yourself. If you want to be my maid, you're barely qualified. But if you want to be my woman, you're not worthy. The reason I came to the 7-Star sect is that I have other more important things to do. It's not because of you. You'd better remember this. Hearing this, Yun Sharon slowly opened her eyes. She was very unconvinced. What did he mean by barely qualified? No matter what, she was the daughter of the Blue Cloud sect's sect master, and her family background was quite prominent. Even if Wang Haoren was the young master of super sect, wasn't he too arrogant? However, Yun Sharon only dared to think these words in her heart and did not dare to say them out loud. Nevertheless, she could not help but say it lightly to show her resistance. Then why do you want to stay in the same room as me? Yun Sharon seemed to want to prove that he was lusting after her. Didn't you hear what I said just now? Go get some water to wash my feet, Wang Haoren replied indifferently. Hearing this, Yun Sharon finally understood. So this guy really treated her as a maid. How preposterous! Yun Sharon wanted to say that a warrior would rather be killed than humiliated, but in the end, she did not have the courage. It was just pouring water. There was no need to make it equal to her life. Yun Charan endured her displeasure and went to get a basin of water. After soaking his feet for a while, Wang Haoran quickly rested on the bed. There was only one bed in this room. Yun Charan sighed when she saw this scene. She lay on the table helplessly and prepared to make do for the night. At first, she could not fall asleep, but somehow she became more and more sleepy and soon fell asleep. At this moment, Wang Haoran suddenly opened his eyes. The reason why he shared a room with Yun Charan was not that he planned to have sex with her directly, but to make it easier for him to create dreams. This was a new spell that Wang Haoran learned after his cultivation reached the 8th level of the Qi refinement realm. It was called the Dream Creation Spell. The Dream Creation Spell seemed a little useless, but it was extremely useful to Wang Haoran. Chapter 612. The next day, Yun Charan slowly woke up. Last night, she had a strange dream. In the dream, she was the maid of an immortal emperor. Moreover, the scene in the dream was extremely realistic. She could still recall the details. However, after thinking about it for a while, she felt her face heat up. This was because this kind of dream was the kind that could not be told to outsiders. Moreover, the immortal emperor's appearance was very similar to someone else's. Yun Charan's unfocused eyes focused on Wang Haoran, who was by the window. That's right. The immortal emperor in the dream was exactly the same as Wang Haoran. Sensing that Yun Charan was sizing him up, Wang Haoran retracted his gaze from the window and looked at Yun Charan's face. "Go and get some water," Wang Haoran said indifferently. Although the scenery in the ancient city was not bad, there were many things that were inconvenient. They maintained some of the ancient style. Among them, the lifestyle was naturally one of them. Yun Charan's gaze met Wang Haoran's. For a moment, she felt that Wang Haoran's figure overlapped with the immortal emperor in her dream. Yes. For some reason, Yun Charan answered obediently. However, she soon realized that it was just a dream. After all, how could there be an immortal in this world? Even if there was, this immortal could not be Wang Haoran. Wang Haoran was at most the young master of super sect. Although he had reached the realm of neutralizing strength great grandmaster at a young age, he had plenty of resources. However, in the super sects, where cultivation resources were abundant, it was not surprising that Wang Haoran was born if they were nurtured with great effort. Of course, Wang Haoran's talent in martial arts was also very important. However, it was not enough to make Yun Charan, the daughter of the sect master of first-rate sect, be a lowly servant. However, the situation was better than her. Yun Charan could only suppress the pride in her heart and go to get water for Wang Haoran. In the middle of the morning, Wang Haoran and Yun Charan left the inn. They passed through a few ancient city roads and arrived at the entrance of the Seven Stars Sects building complex. On the way, Wang Haoran asked Yun Charan about the situation of the forces in the ancient city. Soon, he found out that there were 2 other forces in the ancient city that were comparable to the Seven Stars sect. There were some conflicts between the 3 forces, and they often had conflicts. When Wang Haoran heard this, he could roughly determine that this was the mission challenge of the Seven Stars sect's young master in the beginner map. That was to get rid of the other 2 forces and let the Seven Stars sect dominate. After clearing the stage, they continued on to other maps. Wang Haoran was all too familiar with this kind of trick. There were disciples guarding the gate of the Seven Stars sect. Yun Charan told them the way. After hearing this, the disciple asked Yun Charan to wait for a moment and immediately left to report. After a short while, he returned and invited Yun Charan and Wang Haoran into the sect. Under the guidance of this disciple, Wang Haoran and Yun Charan came to a place that looked like a meeting hall. Wang Haoran used his X-ray vision to look at the situation in advance. He saw a middle-aged man sitting at the head of the meeting hall. On both sides of Chu Zhan sat some old men. At the head of the table was an old man who looked very arrogant. From the looks of it, they seemed to have been discussing something just now. Moreover, they did not agree on what they were discussing. Otherwise, the middle-aged man at the head of the table and the old man at the head of the table would not be glaring at each other. Their gazes confronted each other until Yun Charan and Wang Haoran arrived in the hall. Then, both sides restrained themselves. "Greetings, Uncle Chu." Yun Churin greeted the middle-aged man at the head of the table very politely. The relationship between the Blue Cloud sect and the Seven Star sect was relatively good. Yun Churin had seen Chu Zhan before, so she naturally knew him. After not seeing you for a few years, Churin has really become more and more beautiful. Yin Feng has a good daughter. Chu Zhan's words sounded like a compliment, but there was a deeper meaning behind them. Uncle Chu, you flatter me. Yin Churin understood some of the meaning behind his words. She felt a little embarrassed, but she still responded with a smile. Churin, why did you suddenly visit us? Chu Zhan was in a bad mood. After exchanging pleasantries with Yin Churin, he did not want to be long-winded and directly asked. Yin Churin was about to speak. However, the old man at the head of the table suddenly spoke first. Sectmaster, you don't have to call Chu Tian over to abolish his position as the successor. But now that Chu Tian's fiancé is here, he should at least appear. Otherwise, wouldn't we be neglecting him? Chu Zhan glared at him. This detestable old man was naturally that first elder who opposed him. That's right. Chu Tian should come out. Don't let others mock our seven-star sect for not knowing how to treat guests. That's right. That's right. As soon as the first elder spoke, some of the elders present quickly agreed. Chu Zhan frowned and glanced at this group of old fellows. Then, he helplessly asked the disciple to inform Chu Tian to come over. He did not want his son to be attacked in public, so he insisted on not letting Chu Tian come over when he abolished his position as the successor. However, now that Yin Churin was here, Chu Tian had no choice but to appear. Moreover, the first elder's sudden words were obviously intentional. He wanted to embarrass Chu Tian in front of others. Obviously, the first elder also knew that Yin Churin had arrived at the ancient city last night. Moreover, he had roughly guessed the purpose of Yin Churin's visit. Otherwise, there wouldn't be 2 empty seats in a meeting hall today. It was probably deliberately arranged by the first elder. While waiting, the first elder warmly invited Wang Haoren and Yin Churin to take a seat. Wang Haoren looked at the first elder's face and knew that he was a villain. Not long after, a handsome young man with a pale face came to the meeting hall. Chu Tian, you're here. Take a seat. The first elder seemed to be enthusiastic, but when he scanned the hall and found that there were no seats, he patted his wrinkled forehead and said, I'm sorry. There are no seats left. I'll have to trouble you to stand for a while, young master. Hearing the conversation, Wang Haoren also confirmed that this handsome young man with a pale face was Chu Tian. He immediately communicated with the system and began to check. Protagonist, Chu Tian, combat strength, 39, charm, 197, protagonist aura, 20278, rapidly increasing. Skill Goldfinger not triggered. Chu Tian's protagonist aura was almost 10,000 points lower than Yifan's. However, considering that Chu Tian's protagonist aura was still rapidly increasing, his potential should not be much lower than Yifan's. In fact, it might even be higher than Yifan's in the end. What made Wang Haoren the happiest was undoubtedly that Chu Tian's Goldfinger had not been triggered. In other words, Wang Haoren had a chance to stop him. Because if Chu Tian had already triggered his Goldfinger, it was almost impossible to stop him. Previously, there was such an example. That was Lu Chun, who had obtained the ancient immortal doctor's inheritance. At that time, Wang Haoren wanted to steal Lu Chen's jade pendant, but in the end, he went for wool and came home shorn. This was because once something like a Goldfinger was bound to the protagonist, it was almost impossible to steal it. He just did not know what Chu Tian's Goldfinger was. However, judging from the plot of the annulment, the first Goldfinger that Wang Haoren thought of was naturally the accompanying grandfather, followed by a heaven-defying treasure. However, Wang Haoren was not looking forward to the accompanying grandfather at all. After all, he had replicated Yi Fan's memory, and his own knowledge and knowledge were profound enough. Moreover, there were some things that he usually did that could not be told to outsiders. Bringing an old grandfather around to watch the show. Moreover, the accompanying grandfather was usually more righteous and did not match a villain like him. There would be a conflict of values. With that thought in mind, Wang Haoren immediately used his X-ray vision to size up Chu Tian. He wanted to see if he had anything like a ring or a bracelet on his body. This was because these kinds of things were usually where the accompanying grandfather lived. Otherwise, why would they be called the accompanying grandfather? Chapter 613. Wang Haoran looked Chu Tian up and down and quickly realized that he did not have a ring or other items on him. Chu Tian's golden finger was not a portable old man. It was very likely that it was some kind of heaven-defying treasure. Wang Haoran secretly rejoiced after making this judgment. Just as Wang Haoran was having these thoughts, Chu Tian silently stared at the first elder. He was obviously dissatisfied with the first elder's sarcastic words just now. However, he did not make a scene. He just glanced around the meeting hall. His gaze quickly fell on Yun Churen. It had to be said that Yun Churen was quite beautiful. At the age of 18, she was very attractive to a young man of Chu Tian's age. However, Chu Tian immediately realized the purpose of Yun Churen's visit, and his admiration quickly dissipated. His expression also became colder. Chu Tian's gaze shifted slightly and landed on Wang Haoran. A strong sense of displeasure instinctively rose in his heart. If Yun Churen had brought an elder to break off the engagement, he might have reluctantly accepted it. However, Yun Churen brought a man who was about her age. What was the meaning of this? Was she showing off? Or was she trying to humiliate him? Yun Churen and Chu Tian had met before, but they had not spoken more than 10 sentences in total. Under such circumstances, it was naturally inconvenient for her to say anything to Chu Tian. Moreover, she did not have a good impression of Chu Tian, but she did not want to ridicule and humiliate him in front of his face. Yun Churen turned to look at Chu Zhan and handed over the letter written by Yun Feng. "Uncle Chu, this is a letter from my father." Chu Zhan took it and opened the envelope to glance at it. A hint of anger gradually appeared on his originally cold face. Although he had a hunch, after seeing Yun Feng's handwritten letter with his own eyes, Chu Zhan still could not suppress his anger. Yun Feng was the one who first proposed the engagement between Yun Churen and Chu Tian. Now, the engagement had not been established for long, and he suddenly wanted to break off the engagement. Although his son had become a cripple, it was understandable that the engagement was broken off. However, Chu Tian's injury had not recovered yet. Yun Feng's actions were too unreasonable. If Yun Feng had broken off the engagement a little later, Chu Zhan would have felt much better. However, Yun Feng was quite shrewd and did not come in person. Chu Zhan couldn't vent his anger on a junior. After all, as the leader of a sect, he still had to have the necessary bearing. However, there were some things that Chu Zhan wanted to figure out. Did you bring this up? Or did your father bring it up? Yun Churen felt a little uneasy. She glanced at Wang Haoran subconsciously and said, "I'm just following your orders, father. You're such an obedient child." Chu Zhan naturally wouldn't believe whatever he heard. As the master of a sect, Chu Zhan's eyesight was amazing. Naturally, he noticed that Yun Churen looked to the side before replying. "Sect master, what is written in the letter?" The first elder could read many things from Chu Zhan's expression. He couldn't help but ask, "Just some insignificant things." Chu Zhan closed the letter and said vaguely. The first elder could only pull back his head that he had pulled out to peek. Then, he looked at Yun Churen and asked with a smile, "Miss Yun, when do you plan to marry our young master?" Hearing this, Chu Zhan immediately glared at the first elder. He secretly thought that this old bastard was really cunning. After hearing this, Yun Churen suddenly wanted to say something but hesitated. Perhaps Chu Zhan cared about Chu Tian's feelings. His words just now clearly showed that he didn't want to announce the cancellation of the engagement here. Yun Churen naturally saw this. The first elder's sudden question made Yun Churen momentarily speechless, because it was not appropriate to admit or deny it. "Can't you tell what you're doing here?" Wang Haoran saw this and reminded her in a low voice. Yun Churen suddenly came to her senses and made a decision in her heart. Anyway, this matter would be announced sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. "My engagement with Chu Tian has been canceled." Yun Churen responded to the first elder and also announced her purpose of coming here. In the meeting hall, most of the elders who heard this snickered. Chu Zhan's expression was extremely unsightly. His hand that was grabbing the corner of the table inadvertently exerted force and directly left deep finger marks on the corner of the table. So Miss Yun is here to cancel the engagement. It's all my fault for not being able to see through it. The first elder seemed to look at Chu Tian guiltily and said, "Young master, I'm really sorry." His words seemed to be expressing his apology, but the wrinkles on his old face clearly showed how happy this old fellow was at this moment. Seeing that the matter was exposed, Yin Charan did not hide it anymore. She handed the handwritten copy of the Blue Cloud Sect's Peerless Lightness skill, called the Sky Luo Steps, that she carried with her, to Chu Zhan. "Uncle Chu, this is a gift from my father to the Seven Stars sect to express his apology." Chu Zhan did not reach out to take it, but Yin Charan still placed the handwritten copy of the Sky Luo Steps on the table in front of Chu Zhan. Chu Zhan's face was as gloomy as water, but he could still endure it. However, Chu Tian saw this and gritted his teeth. He, who had been silent for a long time, finally could not bear it anymore. Wang Haoran had been paying attention to Chu Tian's reaction. When he saw this scene, he secretly exclaimed, "The famous scene is coming." After Yin Charan placed the handwritten copy on the table, she took a few steps back and was about to bid farewell to Chu Zhan. The group of elders led by the great elder were all gloating over the misfortune of others. Chu Tian saw this and suddenly said in a deep voice, "Yin Charan, the engagement was set by your father shamelessly. Although my meridians are now damaged and I've become a cripple, it's understandable for you to break off the engagement, but you shouldn't have brought this up in front of so many people. As the sect master, my father was humiliated by you today. Where will his dignity in the Seven Stars sect be in the future?" After being scolded like this, Yin Charan frowned and said, "This is an internal problem of the Seven Stars sect. What does it have to do with me?" She originally wanted to talk to Chu Zhan about this matter in a low-key manner, but the first elder of the Seven Stars sect deliberately provoked her. This was clearly an internal problem of the Seven Stars sect. How could he blame her? Of course, Yin Charan was unhappy. "It's indeed an internal problem of the Seven Stars sect, but you shouldn't have said it directly at this time and made my father be ridiculed," Chu Tian retorted. "Then according to you, I shouldn't have canceled the engagement and should have married you?" Yin Charan asked in return. "Yin Charan, don't be self-righteous. Although I admit that you're very beautiful, Chu Tian, won't shamelessly pester you." Chu Tian sneered. After leaving the meeting hall for a while, he found a pen and paper from somewhere. He wrote quickly, but something was written on the paper. After he finished writing, he threw the pen and threw the paper with the ink still wet at Yin Charan. "Yin Charan, listen carefully. You're not here to cancel the engagement today. Chu Tian, am going to divorce you." Every word of Chu Tian's was powerful and resonating. Chapter 614. Wang Haoran had been waiting for a long time. Finally, the most important part of the scene was here. "Good. You're indeed my son. You're ambitious." Chu Zhan was delighted to see his son's action. Yin Charan was stunned for a moment when the divorce letter hit her in the face. Then, anger appeared on her pretty face. Chu Tian did not want to be embarrassed, so he wrote a divorce letter. However, how could Yin Charan maintain her dignity? "Chu Tian, I've already proposed to break off the engagement, so we have nothing to do with each other. You have no right to write a divorce letter. Moreover, don't you think it's ridiculous to write a divorce letter in your current situation?" After seeing Chu Tian's attitude, Yin Charan lost her temper and could not be bothered to care about this useless person's feelings. After all, she was not a pushover. Yin Charan had a mocking look on her face. She almost called Chu Tian a useless person. Only she could break off the engagement, but Chu Tian was not worthy to write a divorce letter. Chu Tian naturally understood what she meant, and his face turned ferocious. "Yin Charan, I really want to kill you." Chu Tian's words were squeezed out from between his teeth. When Yin Charan saw his expression, an inexplicable sense of fear rose in her heart. This was because Chu Tian's gaze was too terrifying. Wang Haoran saw this from the side and knew that it was time for him to make a move. "Watch your words," Wang Haoran warned. "This is a grudge between Yin Charan and me. It's not your turn to interfere." Chu Tian was young and hot-blooded. At this moment, He was angry and could not care less. Since he was unhappy, he naturally had to fight back. However, before he could finish his sentence, there was a loud slap on his face. Chu Tian was slapped in the face. The crisp sound of slap rang out in the meeting hall. 5 bright, red fingerprints appeared on Chu Tian's face at a speed visible to the naked eye. When the first elder and the others saw this scene, they were secretly happy. They could not wait for the matter to blow up. When Chu Zhan saw his son being slapped, his face instantly darkened, but he did not immediately flare up. Yin Chuan was shocked and looked at Wang Haoran in surprise. She did not expect Wang Haoran to hit someone, and it was on the face. Although she was here to break off the engagement, she did not want to become enemies with the Seven Stars sect. He couldn't help but blame Wang Haoran for being impulsive. Wang Haoran sensed Yun Chuan's emotions and suddenly said to Chu Tian, "Don't worry. Chu Ran is not someone you can insult. This slap is to teach you a lesson on Chu Ran's behalf." Hearing this, Yun Chuan's eyes instantly widened. This guy was actually standing up for him. When they were at the inn, he had treated her like a servant girl. However, if Wang Haoran was not standing up for him, then there was no need for him to hit Chu Tian. After all, they had never seen each other before, so there was no enmity between them. Thinking of this, Yun Chuan's resentment towards Wang Haoran immediately dissipated. Even the way she looked at Wang Haoran became gentler. "Who are you? You're hitting my son in front of me in the Seven Stars sect's territory. Aren't you looking down on me too much?" Chu Zhan said coldly, "It's none of your business who I am, but there's one thing you need to know. Other than me, no one can insult Chu Ran, not even the Emperor," Wang Haoran said. Yin Chuan could not help but feel touched when she heard this. However, she soon realized that his words were a little strange. This was because the other meaning of his words was that others were not allowed to insult her, but he was allowed to do so. However, the situation was so tense now, so Yun Chuan did not dwell on this issue. She only secretly tugged at the corner of Wang Haoran's clothes, hinting at him not to be impulsive. This was the Seven Stars sect's territory. Although Wang Haoran was a great grandmaster of neutralizing strength, if he thought that he could do whatever he wanted in the Seven Stars sect, he would be making a big mistake. "Uncle Chu, my friend misspoke. Please forgive him." Yun Chuan wanted to salvage the situation. "You won't let it go with just that," Chu Zhan said coldly. Not to mention that Chu Tian was his son. Even if Chu Tian was an ordinary disciple of the Seven Stars sect, being passive in front of him was tantamount to slapping his face. Following Chu Zhan's words, Yun Chuan could already feel the pressure of a vast, genuine qi coming towards her. Uncle Chu, the Blue Cloud sect, and the Seven Stars sect can be considered to have a good relationship. Please reconsider. Yun Chuan could only bring up the sect, hoping to use this to make Chu Zhan hesitate. However, the situation had already reached this point. If Chu Zhan retreated, it would be even more embarrassing. This was because if Chu Zhan gave up, others would only think that he was afraid of the Blue Cloud sect. "Sectmaster, you can't. You can't let the Seven Stars sect and the Blue Cloud sect fall out because of Chu Tian." The first elder felt that Chu Zhan was about to make a move, so he immediately stopped him. He was going against Chu Zhan, but he was still from the Seven Stars sect. Chu Zhan's move was dragging the entire Seven Stars sect down. Chu Zhan ignored the first elder's words. A wave of vital energy surged out and headed toward Wang Haoran and Yun Chuan. However, Chu Zhan still had a sense of propriety. He only planned to slightly injure the two of them to teach them a lesson and save the Seven Stars sect and Chu Tian's face. He did not plan to go overboard. It was true that he was Chu Tian's father, but he still had to consider the Seven Stars sect. Yun Chuan felt the fluctuation of vital energy, and her face turned slightly pale. She wanted to circulate enough vital energy to protect her body so that she would not be injured. However, at this moment, Wang Haoran suddenly walked past her and took a step forward. It was like an iron wall, blocking all the true qi that was coming at him. Chu Zhan turned pale with fright. His vital energy cultivation had reached 200 years. Although he did not use his full strength just now, It was definitely not something that a junior could block so easily. However, such an impossible thing still happened. Who exactly is he? Chu Zhan's heart trembled as he re-examined Wang Haoren. Yin Charan was also a little dumbfounded by this, but she soon understood that Wang Haoren's cultivation was definitely not the great grandmaster of neutralizing strength that he had revealed earlier. Her originally worried state of mind immediately relaxed. Her gaze toward Wang Haoren became gentler. She even inadvertently tilted her head to size up the side of his face. It was the first time Yin Charan realized that he was actually so good-looking. He was really handsome. Ding. The female lead, Yin Charan's favorability toward the host has increased by 20. Current favorability is 40, very friendly. Wang Haoren received the system message, and his heart skipped a beat. He turned around and asked Yin Charan, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Yin Charan shook her head slightly and replied in a gentle voice, "Who exactly are you?" After Chu Zhan re-examined Wang Haoren, his expression became a little solemn as he repeated his previous question. Wang Haoren temporarily shifted his gaze from Yin Charan to Chu Zhan. He still did not want to answer Chu Zhan's question. He only replied, "I took one of your moves just now. Now, try taking one of mine." Chapter 615. Wang Haoren's voice wasn't loud, but when it reached Chu Zhan's ears, his nerves instantly tensed up. However, Chu Zhan was the leader of a sect and had made a name for himself in the Jianghu for many years. Naturally, he would not be afraid of a junior. "Then I'd like to see what you're capable of," Chu Zhan said in a low voice as he circulated his genuine qi. The previous exchange of blows made Chu Zhan realize that this young man in front of him was not simple. Naturally, he did not dare to underestimate him. Wang Haoren stood in place and pointed at Chu Zhan, gently pointing at the void. The genuine qi that Chu Zhan had gathered around his body instantly dissipated. His internal organs shook violently, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. This scene caused everyone around to turn pale with fright. Chu Tian's eyes were filled with killing intent as he glared at Wang Haoren. However, he was not strong enough and could not do anything. He could only run forward and ask about his father's condition. Chu Zhan's face was pale. After a while, he recovered his breath and asked Wang Haoren in shock, "Are you from an ancient sect?" Yin Charan was also shocked when she heard this. She had always been curious about Wang Haoren's background. Yin Charan had also read about the ancient sects in the ancient books of the Blue Cloud sect, but she had only thought that it was a legend. However, Wang Haoren's strength was too incredible. It only made sense that he was from an ancient sect. "You're quite knowledgeable." Wang Haoren's words were a disguised admission. Chu Zhan sighed when he heard this, as if he felt that his loss was justified. However, he quickly thought of another matter. "Please forgive me for being blind and offending you." Chu Zhan suddenly apologized. Hearing this, Wang Haoren was surprised. Chu Zhan was very unyielding just now. Now that he suddenly changed his attitude, it was definitely not because he was afraid of his strength. However, Wang Haoren did not reply because he felt that Chu Zhan had something else to say. Sure enough, after Chu Zhan finished speaking, he inadvertently glanced at Chu Tian before continuing to speak to Wang Haoren. "My son was unfortunately injured during his training, which resulted in his meridians being damaged. He has no fate with martial arts. I heard that there are many miraculous elixirs in the ancient sections." Chu Zhan paused for a moment to express his wish. "I would like to request for a spirit medicine that can repair meridians. I hope that you can grant it to me. Of course, the matter of remuneration can be discussed. As long as I can afford it, I will definitely not frown. Why should I save this brat?" Wang Haoren glanced at Chu Tian. Although Chu Tian wasn't angry, Wang Haoren could read the deep hatred in Chu Tian's eyes. Right now, Chu Tian's strength wasn't enough, so he had to endure. Once this fellow grew up, he would probably find him to settle the score. After all, Chu Tian had just been slapped, and now Chu Zhan had been injured by him. For a protagonist like this who had unexpectedly become a cripple and then rose up against the heavens, if he had the strength to take revenge, he would definitely not be soft-hearted. Of course, Wang Haoren wasn't that stupid. He would wait until Chu Tian grew up. Tian just wrote that divorce letter in a moment of anger, but everyone knows that Tian isn't qualified. He's not worthy of Miss Yun at all. Chu Zhan had lived for a long time, and his words didn't seem to take the matter of being injured to heart at all. He even gave his blessings. Miss Yun is such a blessed girl. She's a match made in heaven with you. Chu Tian, who was supporting Chu Zhan, was furious and jealous. Just now, he had written that divorce letter in a moment of impulse. It seemed that he didn't care about Yin Charn at all. However, he still hoped that one day he would grow up and reach a level that Yin Charn could only look up to. Then, he would make Yin Charn regret it. To put it bluntly, Chu Tian still had feelings for Yin Charn. When Chu Tian heard his father belittling him and giving his blessings to Wang Haoran and Yun Churan, he naturally felt uncomfortable. However, Chu Tian also understood that his father did this for him. Although he was very unhappy, he still kept his mouth shut and didn't say a word. I think you've misunderstood. Yin Churan and I don't have that kind of relationship. She's just my maidservant, Wang Haoran stated indifferently and then added. However, even if she's my maidservant, she's still very noble. She's definitely not someone that others can insult. When Yin Churan heard this, she immediately wanted to refute, but she suddenly swallowed her words when they were about to come out of her mouth. Compared to any ancient sect, the top forces of the hidden Jianghu were simply heaven and earth. If someone from an ancient sect expressed that they wanted to take the daughter of the master of a top force in the hidden Jianghu as their maidservant, there would definitely be many people rushing over like ducks. Although the title of a maidservant sounded lowly, it was actually a kind of honor in the secluded Jianghu. When these strange thoughts arose in her mind, Yin Churan couldn't help but think of the dream she had last night. In the dream, he was the immortal emperor and she was a maidservant. Was this a coincidence? Or was there some kind of connection? When Chu Tian heard Wang Haoran's words and saw that Yin Churan didn't refute, the jealousy in his heart burned even more. This was because he actually had the idea of making Yin Churan his maidservant in the future to take revenge on Yin Churan for breaking off the engagement. If Wang Haoran hadn't slapped him just now, he planned to mention the 3-year or 5-year agreement to Yin Churan and then go to the Blue Cloud sect to compete with Yin Churan. If Yin Churan lost, he would make her his maidservant. But who would have thought that Yin Churan was now someone else's maidservant? As a person of the hidden Jianghu, Chu Tian understood the duties of a maidservant too well. Not only did she have to serve dishes, wash clothes, and massage the master's back, but she also had to, thinking of this, Chu Tian's heart suddenly felt suffocated. Ding! The host has damaged Chu Tian's mentality. The reward is 2,000 villain points. Chu Tian's protagonist Halo -100, and the host's villain Halo +100. You're right. You're so noble that even your maidservant is 1,000 times nobler than Tian. Chu Zhan flattered him on the surface, and then brought up the matter just now. I hope you can give me the spiritual medicine to repair my meridians. That's not difficult, Wang Haoran replied softly, then continued. You're right. I still lack a servant to guard the door. I think your son is quite suitable. It won't take too long. A month will do. When Chu Zhan heard this, he looked at Chu Tian with a questioning look in his eyes. Father, maybe I'm destined to be a cripple, Chu Tian said. Chu Zhan sighed. The meaning of Chu Tian's words was already very obvious. He would rather be a cripple than a servant. Chu Zhan knew that his son was stubborn. Once he had decided on something, it would be very difficult to change his mind. However, Chu Zhan was afraid that his son would miss the opportunity, so he planned to wait for him to calm down before persuading him. After thinking for a while, Chu Zhan said to Wang Haoran, You and Miss Yin have come from afar. Why don't you let me be the host and stay in the 7-star sect for a few days? Okay. Wang Haoran immediately agreed. After the incident of breaking off the engagement, it was time for Chu Tian's cheat to come. Next, he only needed to keep an eye on Chu Tian. Chapter 616. Of course, Chu Zhan didn't know what Wang Haoran was thinking. After he agreed, he immediately wanted to arrange a place for them to stay. However, before he could say anything, the first elder spoke first. Sect Master, you're injured. Let me arrange this. Then, without waiting for Chu Zhan's agreement, he walked directly to Wang Haoran and expressed his sincerity. Chu Zhan was naturally displeased. However, he didn't argue with the first elder. Anyway, he just wanted Wang Haoran to stay and use this time to enlighten Chu Tian. However, Chu Zhan didn't understand. No matter how he persuaded, Chu Tian wouldn't agree. The first elder soon left with Wang Haoran and Yun Chuan. Chu Tian immediately called a doctor over to treat his father. The result was that Chu Zhan needed more than a month to fully recover. After hearing this, Chu Tian gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. His hatred for Wang Haoran grew infinitely. Tian, it's nothing. He just needs to recuperate for a while. Chu Zhan sensed his son's mood and immediately expressed that it was fine. He wanted to comfort him and then reminded him, that person is from an ancient sect. He's definitely not someone we can afford to offend. Don't be rash. Chu Tian was secretly disdainful. So what if he was from an ancient sect? He had seen the battle between immortals and gods. The scene of the stars collapsing and the galaxy reversing was still fresh in his mind. The black tower that the two immortals were fighting over was definitely not an ordinary thing. If he could find a way to open it, he wouldn't have to be afraid of an ancient sect. That person slapped him, injured his father, and even seduced his fiancée. He had to take revenge no matter what. And that mysterious black tower might be his only hope of turning things around. Father, I know what I'm doing. Have a good rest, Chu Tian replied calmly. After sending Chu Zhan to his room, he went to the sect's library. There were many strange books in the library, and Chu Tian tried to find a way to open the black tower. After arriving at the library, Chu Tian immediately flipped through the books. However, what Chu Tian didn't notice was that someone was staring at him from far away. This person was undoubtedly Wang Haoran. The reason why Wang Haoran chose to stay in the seven-star sect was that he wanted to use his X-ray vision to observe Chu Tian's next move so that he could intercept Chu Tian's opportunity. Moreover, he could do it without anyone noticing. After all, Wang Haoran was in his room. No one would have thought that he was watching Chu Tian's movements. Chu Tian diligently flipped through the ancient books and saw many strange methods, such as burning with fire, soaking in water, and so on. Putting down the book, Chu Tian was filled with inspiration as he quickly left the hidden book pavilion. He seemed to be preparing to try it out. However, Wang Haoran felt that these methods that Chu Tian saw were all useless. Usually, the triggering of this kind of treasure was mostly an accident. Instead, it was triggered by the classic method of dripping blood to recognize the owner. Wang Haoran guessed that Chu Tian had tried the methods that he saw in the ancient books and found that they were useless. Then, he was furious and accidentally cut his finger. His blood dripped on the treasure and made it recognize him as its owner. It seemed that the author who built the novel world with Chu Tian as the protagonist was really wishy-washy. Wouldn't it be better to let Chu Tian drip blood to recognize him as its owner? Why did he have to go through so much trouble? Moreover, in the main plot, this matter was deliberately arranged after the engagement was annulled. However, Wang Haoran was quite happy about this. This was because, if not, how could he have the chance to intercept the opportunity? While he was thinking, Chu Tian quickly returned to his room. He took out a black tower that was about a foot tall from under the bed. Then, he wrapped it in a cloth and left the room. Chu Tian quietly went to the back mountain of the seven-star sect and prepared to try the method in the ancient books. First, he burned it. However, just as Chu Tian was about to pick up firewood, he felt a pain in the back of his neck and fainted on the ground. Wang Haoran squatted down and picked up the black tower that was wrapped in a cloth from Chu Tian's body. On the surface, the black tower seemed ordinary. However, Wang Haoran, who knew many tricks, knew that the more ordinary something was, the more amazing it was. Nevertheless, Wang Haoran did not immediately drip his blood to make it recognize him as its owner. Instead, he found another quiet place in the back mountain and used his spiritual qi to build a formation to isolate himself from the outside world. When he let the treasure recognize him as its owner, he did not know what would happen. For example, he might faint during the process. If he fainted for too long and Chu Tian woke up before him, he might be killed instead. Of course, Wang Haoran wanted to avoid this kind of thing. He stayed inside the formation to avoid being disturbed by creatures from the outside world. Only then did Wang Haoran use his spiritual qi to cut his finger and drip his blood on the Black Tower. The blood touched the Black Tower and quickly sank into it. At the next moment, the Black Tower emitted a light. At first, it was only some scattered light, but as more blood entered, the light became brighter. When the light emitted to a certain extent, the Black Tower turned into a stream of light and suddenly entered between Wang Haoran's eyebrows. Ding! The host intercepted the main character's opportunity and obtained 20,000 villain points. Chu Tian protagonist aura -1,000. Host villain aura +1,000. Wang Haoran only felt a swelling pain in his head, and his consciousness gradually fell asleep. When he woke up, he found that the sky was already dark. Wang Haoran rejoiced, secretly thinking that he had seen many tricks and had foresight. If he really dripped his blood in front of Chu Tian just now, he would be in big trouble. Letting out a sigh of relief, Wang Haoran felt some changes in his body. Soon, Wang Haoran found that in his mind, or more accurately, in his sea of consciousness. In his sea of consciousness, the mysterious Black Tower quietly floated, emitting a mysterious light. As expected, the treasure still needed this method of dripping blood to recognize its owner. Wang Haoran only felt that this treasure had taken root in his sea of consciousness and had already become a part of him. Communicating with the Black Tower, Wang Haoran quickly obtained some information related to the Black Tower. This information was not much, but it showed that this Black Tower's origin was extremely awesome. The Black Tower was called the Heaven-Splitting Tower, and it was a natural treasure that accompanied this universe. Wang Haoran was overjoyed. With a thought, he quickly entered the first level of the Black Tower. Entering the Black Tower could not only be done with one's consciousness, but also with one's body. After Wang Haoran entered the Black Tower, his figure directly disappeared from the real world. The Black Tower itself turned into a speck of dust. This speck of dust, even a tribulation-passing celestial venerable would not be able to detect. In other words, with this Black Tower, as long as one's consciousness was not controlled by a celestial venerable, one could enter the Black Tower with a thought. Even a celestial venerable could not do anything to Wang Haoran. This was simply an excellent life-saving skill. Wang Haoran was happy for a while, and then he began to study the Black Tower. The Black Tower had a total of 10 levels. Including Tao integration, it seemed to correspond to the 10 great realms of cultivation. Wang Haoran could only enter the first level now. After crossing the Qi refinement stage, he could unlock the second level, and so on. Chapter 617. The first floor of the Heaven-Splitting Pagoda was empty, as if there was nothing there. However, for such a heaven-defying treasure, even the first floor had its uses. Moreover, it was most likely related to cultivation. Otherwise, how could Chu Tian have risen in the main storyline? Wang Haoran began to study it and quickly understood the use of the first floor. First, the spirit qi on the first floor of the Heaven-Splitting Tower was many times denser than the spirit qi in the outside world. Cultivating here would naturally be much faster than cultivating in the outside world. However, this was of no use to Wang Haoran. That was because his cultivation did not rely on absorbing spiritual energy from the outside world. Secondly, there was a healing formation carved into the first level, which could heal and heal injuries. Moreover, it was extremely effective. As long as one was not dead and still had a breath of life, as long as they came here, they could be healed. Wang Haoran guessed that if Chu Tian obtained the Heaven-Splitting Tower, he would only need to stay here for a short period of time, and his damaged meridians would be completely healed. The third point, which was also the most important one, was that the flow of time here was different from the outside world. It was much slower than the outside world. Wang Haoran had a rough idea. One day in the outside world was equivalent to 10 days here. What did that mean? Cultivating here for 10 days was only equivalent to 1 day in the outside world. In other words, it was 10 times the effort. Not to mention a genius, even a piece of trash could rise up. This was very useful to Wang Haoran. he discovered that not only could he enter, but he could also bring other things in, including people. For example, he could only deal with one person in an hour in the outside world. However, in the heaven-splitting tower, he could deal with 10 people. As someone who had a strong sense of time, it was easy to imagine how wonderful it was to have 10 times the time in a day. Moreover, because of this difference in the flow of time, his cultivation speed had also increased by 10 times. Before, he always felt helpless that he could not deal with so many people. Now, this problem was easily solved. If the first floor was already so amazing, what would the second floor be like? This heaven-splitting tower was really a cheat-level cheat. Judging from this cheat, Chu Tian's protagonist aura was not any lower than Yi Fan's. In Yi Fan's main storyline, he could eventually attain Tao integration. With a connate cardinal treasure that accompanied the universe, one would have a high chance of reaching Tao integration. In comparison, Chu Tian's path would be smoother than Yi Fan's. Yi Fan's Goldfinger came from his knowledge and knowledge as a celestial lord. He had also gone through the tribulation transcendent stage on the path of cultivation. He could be considered a different kind of portable old man. Before Tao integration, Yi Fan would not encounter any bottlenecks. Chu Tian's cultivation speed would not be any slower than Yi Fan's since he possessed a connate cardinal treasure like this. Moreover, because of the heaven-splitting tower, it might be easier for him to reach the Tao integration stage compared to Yi Fan. After all, it was a connate cardinal treasure that accompanied this universe, and Tao integration meant controlling the universe. This heaven-splitting pagoda should be of great help to Tao integration cultivators. Wang Haoren calmed down and went down the mountain under the starry night. He returned to the guest room that the Seven Stars sect had arranged for him. Night had just fallen, and it wasn't too long ago. Wang Haoren came to the room and sat down for a while before someone came over. It was the first elder of the Seven Stars sect. As the villain, the first elder naturally wanted to curry favor with Wang Haoren. However, to Wang Haoren, the first elder's value was limited. Therefore, he sent him away after a few words. After the first elder left, someone knocked on the door again. Wang Haoren did not want to pay attention to it, but when he saw with his X-ray vision that it was Yun Churen, he said, "Come in." Yun Churen pushed the door open and entered. She was a little reserved as she came to the table where Wang Haoren was sitting. Wang Haoren poured himself a cup of tea. After taking a sip, he asked indifferently, "Why are you looking for me so late at night? What's the matter?" Yin Churen did not sit down. She just stood there and asked with many doubts, "Who exactly are you?" After knowing that Wang Haoren's background was very terrifying, Yin Churen even addressed him respectfully. "Why do you ask that?" Wang Haoren's heart skipped a beat. He pretended to look at her in confusion. "I had a dream in the inn earlier. It felt very real," Yin Churen said tentatively. Have you discovered my true identity?" Wang Haoren asked. Seeing Wang Haoren's reaction, Yin Churen felt that the dream in the inn earlier might not be just a dream. "Celestial Emperor?" Yin Churen curtsied and used the way she addressed him in her dream. Wang Haoren was secretly delighted when he saw her reaction. Originally, he had planned to find an opportunity to fool Yin Churen. Who would have thought that Yin Churen would be so curious that she directly came to find him and even kept testing him? "How did you know?" Wang Haoren pretended to be surprised. "Could that dream be real?" Yin Churen murmured. "What dream did you have?" Wang Haoren asked. Yin Churen hesitated for a moment and told him about the dream she had in the inn earlier. However, she avoided the details that were not important to outsiders. "Sigh, this is actually not a dream. It's our previous life," Wang Haoren said with a sigh after hearing it. "Our previous life?" Yin Churen was surprised. "That's right." Wang Haoren nodded. He used the words he used to fool Tantai Yaoyue and the others to fool Yin Churen. Yin Churen's identity was not a concubine, but a maid. The reason for this arrangement was that Yin Churen was too insensible. Otherwise, she would have been a concubine. Now, she was just a maid. "Is it really our previous life?" Yin Churen was shocked. Wang Haoren knew that she did not completely believe him. He suddenly took her hand. With a thought, the two of them suddenly disappeared into thin air and appeared in the sky-opening tower. "Where is this place?" Yin Churen was in a daze for a moment. She felt that the scenery before her had changed. She was immediately surprised. This is the immortal Emperor Pagoda of my previous life. After I reincarnated, this immortal Emperor Pagoda accompanied me and stayed in my sea of consciousness, Wang Haoran said seriously. Yin Chuan was shocked. For a moment, she was so shocked that she did not know what to say. Wang Haoran pulled her again and left the sky-opening tower. Yin Chuan was in a daze for a moment before she returned to the real world. At this moment, Yin Chuan's worldview had completely collapsed. At the same time, she no longer had any doubts in her heart. Ding! The female lead Yin Chuan's favorability towards the host has increased by 10. Current favorability, 50, admiration. After I recovered the memories of my previous life and met you, I didn't plan to tell you this. However, I didn't expect that some of your previous life's experiences would be replayed in the form of a dream. It seems that our karma hasn't been severed yet, Wang Haoran said slowly. Hearing this, Yin Chuan instinctively knelt on the ground and spoke in a trembling voice. Your Majesty, I have offended you before. Please forgive me. Chapter 618. With the memories of her previous life and the magical abilities that Wang Haoran had displayed, Yin Chuan was naturally willing to submit. However, when she recalled the disrespectful things that she had done to Wang Haoran, she regretted it and was afraid. Wang Haoran deliberately paused for a long time and did not answer, causing Yin Chuan's heart to be in turmoil. After a long while, Wang Haoran said, You offended the emperor. What punishment do you deserve for offending the emperor? Yin Chuan was so scared that her face turned pale. She knelt even lower, and her forehead touched the ground. Please punish me, Emperor. I won't dare to have any complaints. When Wang Haoran saw this scene, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. However, not far away, there was a small fly staring at them. However, it was not a big problem. After Chu Tian was knocked unconscious during the day, he woke up not long after. After waking up, he looked everywhere for the Black Tower, but he could not find it. After that, he had no choice but to go down the mountain and return to the Seven Stars sect. At this moment, he was secretly watching Wang Haoran's guest room not far away. The Black Tower was his only hope, but was knocked unconscious for no reason, and even the heaven-splitting tower was gone. Chu Tian started to think about who had attacked him, and he soon thought of a person. He had already obtained the Black Tower for some days. Chu Tian was very careful and had never let anyone discover it. Even his father did not know. It was impossible for the first elder and the others to know about this. However, today an uninvited guest came to the Seven Stars sect. Although Chu Tian already thought that he was careful enough, that guy was from an ancient sect and had all kinds of unimaginable methods. Perhaps he sensed something and saw him sneaking up the back mountain. So he followed him, knocked him out, and snatched the Black Tower away. After Chu Tian deduced this, he went to Wang Haoran's room to look for him. However, he found that Wang Haoran had not returned yet. He asked the others where Wang Haoran had gone, but no one knew, until Wang Haoran returned at night. Chu Tian was even more certain that the Black Tower was taken away by Wang Haoran. When he wasn't around, he was definitely researching the Black Tower. At this moment, he was keeping watch outside Wang Haoran's guest room. He wanted to find an opportunity to see if he could steal the Black Tower back. However, this would have to wait until it was late at night, when the other party was in deep sleep. Chu Tian had just seen Yin Chuan enter Wang Haoran's room. He did not know what they were talking about. However, Wang Haoran would probably not rest for a while. At the very least, he would have to send Yin Chuan off. Chu Tian was also very patient, quietly waiting outside the room. But after waiting for a while, she found that the lights in Wang Haoran's room were turned off. Chu Tian was surprised. Yin Chuan hadn't come out yet. Why did the lights go out? He was stunned for a moment, but he soon realized what was going on. Chu Tian scratched the wall with his hand and gritted his teeth. After hesitating for a while, Chu Tian quietly moved closer to the window as if he wanted to confirm something. He leaned against the window, tried to listen to the movements inside. Ding! The host has damaged the protagonist Chu Tian's mentality. Obtained 3,000 villain points. Chu Tian's protagonist aura minus 150. Host villain aura plus 150. Just as Chu Tian had expected, it was indeed as he had thought. Chu Tian cursed Yun Churen. That be asterisk TC his heart. The only thoughts he had for Yun Churen had disappeared without a trace. This kind of withered woman was no longer worthy of him. Chu Tian leaned against the wall by the window and waited. He only wanted to find an opportunity to steal something. However, after waiting for an hour or two, the movements inside did not stop. Chu Tian was helpless. He knew that he might not have a chance tonight, so he sneaked away. After Wang Howren saw this, he smiled and continued with his own matters. However, he changed the venue to the sky-splitting tower. The reason why he was in the room previously was because he wanted to take advantage of Chu Tian. To Wang Howren, the villain points were not important now. The villain aura seemed to be particularly useful. This was because the higher the villain aura, the higher the luck. For example, it was very smooth for him to intercept Chu Tian's opportunity. Chu Tian's protagonist aura was very high, so his luck was relatively high. Only those with high enough luck would be able to withstand such an opportunity. Otherwise, it would only attract trouble. And the luck brought by Wang Howren's villain aura could definitely bear this opportunity. Otherwise, it would not have been so smooth. In the sky-splitting tower, the flow of time was much slower than outside. The more time one spent cultivating, the more one's cultivation would increase. Other than that, Yun Churen did not have to deliberately suppress herself. This was because no matter how big the commotion was, the outside world would not know. Ding! The host has captured the female lead Yun Churen for the first time. Obtained 8,000 villain points. Chu Tian's protagonist aura minus 400. Yun Churen's female lead aura minus 400. Host villain aura plus 800. Ding! Yun Churen's favorability towards the host has increased by 20. Current favorability is 70, unchanging affection. Ding! The host has influenced the plot. Obtained 4,000 villain points. Chu Tian's protagonist aura minus 200. Host villain aura plus 200. On the other side, back in his room, Chu Tian also vented his anger and wantonly smashed things. After that, he sulked until dawn. Early the next morning, Chu Tian came to Wang Howren's room and secretly watched. After waiting for a while, he soon saw Wang Howren and Yun Churen coming out of the room. He saw that Yun Churen's face was glowing. Her original girlish temperament had a hint of charm that was not there before, and she looked even more charming. Chu Tian instinctively felt a little moved, but at the same time, he gritted his teeth. After Wang Howren and Yun Churen left his sight, Chu Tian walked into Wang Howren's room and looked around, but he could not find the Black Tower. At noon, Chu Zhan held a banquet and invited Wang Howren and Yun Churen. Chu Tian also arrived under Chu Zhan's strong request. During the banquet, Chu Zhan mentioned again that he wanted to ask Wang Howren for the spirit medicine to repair meridians. Wang Howren still gave the same answer, asking Chu Tian to be a servant. As the main character, Chu Tian was naturally very arrogant. He would rather be a cripple than be a servant. Chu Zhan was very helpless about this. After the banquet, Wang Howren privately looked for the first elder and instructed him to keep an eye on Chu Tian's movements. If there were any unusual movements, he would report it immediately. The first elder originally wanted to curry favor with Wang Howren, and in addition, he was not on good terms with Chu Zhan, so he naturally agreed eagerly. Chu Tian's golden finger was gone, but the protagonist's halo was still there, and it was quite high. Perhaps there were other golden fingers that could be triggered. Of course, Wang Howren did not mind intercepting Chu Tian's opportunity again. After instructing the first elder, Wang Howren left the Seven-Star Sect and returned to Qingling. After Yun Churen knew her identity as a maid, she followed Wang Howren like a shadow. Wang Howren's current cultivation had reached the 9th level of the Qi refinement realm, and he was not far from the Foundation establishment realm. This was because the heaven-splitting tower was a cheat for cultivation. One night of cultivation was equivalent to 10 nights of cultivation. Yun Churen's improvement was also quite obvious. Now, Her vital qi had been transformed into spiritual qi, and she was close to the second level of the qi refinement realm. Yin Chuan's current strength was much stronger than Yin Feng's. This terrifying improvement also made Yin Chuan extremely excited. From her heart to her body, she was extremely respectful to the emperor. As long as the emperor had any orders, she would do it. No matter how excessive the matter was, they would not complain at all. As soon as Wang Haoren returned to Qingling's villa, Feng Anna suddenly ran over and said hurriedly, "It's good to see you back." "It's great to see you back. I want to take some time off." "Why?" Wang Haoren asked. "Something big happened in the Feng family of Hong Kong Island. My stupid sister provoked an expert called Master Yi." Feng Anna gritted her teeth. Chapter 619. When he heard Feng Anna mention the title Master Yi, Wang Haoren could not help but think of someone. It was the Master Yi from Zhangzhou. During the trip to Cheongzhou, Yi Fan had secretly gone to see Feng Yuruo. At that time, Wang Haoren overheard the conversation between Yi Fan and his subordinate. From it, he learned that Yi Fan was going to Hong Kong Island. It had been almost a month since then. Since Yi Fan had gone to Hong Kong Island, it was time for him to make a move. The Feng family of Hong Kong Island was a famous family there. However, judging from Feng Anna's words, the Feng family seemed to be a stepping stone for Yi Fan to show off. He did not expect the Feng family to be the villains. Feng Anna was the female lead. Wang Haoren was surprised, but he quickly reacted. Yi Fan's main storyline had a single female lead. Other than Feng Yuruo, the others could be used as tools. Moreover, Feng Anna had mentioned her sister, or more accurately, her stupid sister. It seemed that Feng Anna's sister was a villain. The reason why he thought that she was only a villain and not a pure villain was because he had to consider that Feng Anna's sister might be taken in by Yi Fan as a subordinate. At that time, she might be a character in the main character's camp. "I really want to go back to Fragrant Island. I beg you, can you let me go back?" Feng Anna saw that Wang Haoren didn't speak for a long time. She couldn't help but feel anxious, so she pleaded. "The Feng family was afraid of being implicated and abandoned you. Your parents even cut ties with you. Do you still care so much about the Feng family?" Wang Haoren did not reply immediately. Instead, he asked in confusion, "I'm indeed disappointed in my parents, but my stupid sister treats me like an older sister. Last time, because my parents cut ties with her, my stupid sister even had a big fight with them. Moreover, Aunt Zhong is also in the Feng family. I don't want anything to happen to them," Feng Anna said. "Then why did you add the word stupid in front of your sister?" Wang Haoren could not help but find it funny. In the younger generation of the Feng family, only my younger sister and I are directly related. In the future, the Feng family will definitely be passed down to either her or me. Last time, my parents broke off their relationship with me. For my silly sister, it was an excellent opportunity. But she was too stupid. She actually pleaded for mercy for me." Feng Anna snorted coldly. "Do you think she's stupid?" Feng Anna's train of thought made Wang Haoren speechless. However, Wang Haoren could clearly feel that although Feng Anna's tone was belittling her sister, she actually cared about her. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't care about her life or death. "I'm not interested in your family affairs, but I haven't been to Hong Kong Island yet. Why don't I go with you?" Wang Haoren responded to Feng Anna's previous words. "Okay." Feng Anna immediately agreed and then asked eagerly, "Do you need to bring anything? I'll prepare it for you." "There's no need for that. It's fine as long as I'm there." "There's no need for formalities," Wang Haoren said. "Well, after arriving at Hong Kong Island, I can arrange it for you. You don't have to worry about it at all." Feng Anna urged. "Then let's go now." "Wait a minute. I'll ask if Aoshua and Schwanzer are going. By the way, help me ask Song Zhihui if she's going to Hong Kong Island," Wang Haoren said to Feng Anna, and then went to the garden to find Feng Xuanzu and Ning Aoshua. Ever since the two of them became sisters, their relationship had become more harmonious than before. At this moment, they were practicing some basic magic that Wang Haoren taught them. They looked very serious. So when Wang Haoren entered the villa just now, they didn't notice. After Wang Haoren came to the garden, Ning Aoshue and Feng Xuanzu immediately stopped practicing and rushed over. Seeing this, Wang Haoren opened his arms and didn't neglect anyone. After snuggling with the two for a while, Wang Haoren proposed to go to Hong Kong Island. Hearing this, Ning Aoshue and Feng Xuanzu immediately agreed. Ning Aoshue lived in Sangzhou for a long time, and Feng Xuanzu stayed in Fengxi Mountain for a long time. Neither of them had been to Hong Kong Island. With such an opportunity, they naturally wanted to wander around. More importantly, they would be accompanied by Wang Haoren, which was what they care about the most. On the other side, Feng Anna called Song Zhihui. Zhihui, I have something to do and need to go back to Hong Kong Island. Do you want to go with me? After the call was connected, Feng Anna asked, I have something to do in Qingling, so I can't go. Song Zhihui declined. Okay then, I won't force you. That's all, I'm hanging up. Feng Anna said. Wait. Song Zhihui stopped and asked, Is Wang Haoren back? He just came back. He asked me to ask you if you want to go to Hong Kong Island with him. Feng Anna said. Is that so? You should have said so earlier. I'll go. Song Zhihui immediately changed her mind. The reason why she didn't want to go to Hong Kong Island with Feng Anna was that she was afraid that Wang Haoren couldn't find her after he returned to Qingling. Now that she knew that Wang Haoren was going, she was more than willing to go. Okay, I'll book the ticket. Let's meet at Qingling Airport. Feng Anna was in a hurry to go back to Hong Kong Island, so she didn't have time to chat with her best friend. Besides, if they really wanted to chat, they could talk for a few hours on the plane. It didn't make a difference. After ending the call with Song Zhihui, Wang Haoren, Ning Aoshue, and Feng Xuanzu also returned to the hall. At this time, they had already missed the early flight back to Hong Kong Island. If they wanted to go to Hong Kong Island, they could only wait until tomorrow, and they might not be able to book the tickets for tomorrow. However, this was not a big problem. Feng Anna had already considered this. She was rich and directly booked a commercial plane. As the eldest princess of the Feng family, Feng Anna was still very rich. Moreover, she had her own clothing brand and was also a little rich woman. Near noon, Wang Haoren, Ning Aoshue, Feng Xuanzu, Song Zhihui, and Feng Anna boarded the commercial plane and embarked on the journey to Hong Kong Island. In the cabin, the girls were chatting, which was very pleasing to the eye. If it were in the past, Wang Haoren would never take so many people with him. Firstly, he was afraid of crashing. Secondly, he was afraid that there was not enough time. He could take care of this, but not that. But now it was different. The reason of the reincarnation of the immortal emperor had already made Ning Aoshue, Feng Xuanzu, and Song Zhihui all believe in it. Now, they were still quite harmonious. As for the problem of time, it was not a big problem. Wang Haoren now had a cheating device for cultivation. In other words, he had 10 times the time. This time, he would probably stay in Hong Kong Island for a while. During this time, he naturally couldn't neglect his cultivation. This time, the flight time to Hong Kong Island was about 3 hours. But for Wang Haoren, who had a cheating device, this 3 hours could become almost 30 hours. There were many things that could be done in 30 hours.